Thank you, moderator. I was waiting for that. Secretary Marcos, could we take roll call to make sure we have a quorum?
Richard Bookwater.
Hi, yes, I'm back.
Great. Lena Doe.
Here.
Denise Miller.
Here.
Jeff Farrell.
Here.
Sharon Pavlovich.
Here.
And Beata Marcos here.
We have a quorum on return. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for allowing that little break. Okay, as we move forward, I think Lena had passed it. I know you and Denise were on this committee and you chaired it, and I know we had some discussion to move it to this meeting. So do you want to kind of fill us in on your thoughts for agenda item 15 on the letters we're looking at?
So since the last meeting, nothing has changed. These letters are the way it is. So I welcome the board's discussion on these letters of if we want to edit them, rewrite them, have staff take a stab at it, what it may, so that we can get these letters out to directors, departments, to inform them that, we have a fieldwork shortage, and that we are trying to communicate with them that we are looking for them to take on this role, or take on this opportunity for future professions in this profession, people in this profession, to gain their experience at their facilities.
Thank you, Lena. Denise, I see you're on. Did you want to share some thoughts?
Just one comment. First off, want to give a big shout out to board member Lena Doe, who was the chair of this committee and did a really nice job of facilitating, stepping in and really representing our profession and the licensee and keeping in mind the consumer. So thank you, Lena Doe. We didn't have to the rest of the other board members. I was on that committee. I would remain silent on commenting here, but we didn't get to have a final meeting. So this is the forum in which I have to bring it. I think the letter's excellent. I just wonder if the opening signature, we would like to recognize that tangent, that piece right there. I recognize what we're trying to do, but it seems, it messes up the flow for me. I think with our profession, you just get right into it, what the PICO statement or what they call the problem statement is, and then we can move that. We would like to recognize and thank you for your hard work, perhaps to more the signature line. That would just be my one and only suggestion, which again, I would have done on committee, but I didn't have the ability to do that. So thank you for your time.
Board member Miller, were you recognizing the first letter or the second one?
Did we take that out of the second one? So I guess my comment's been consistent then. Did I get
The second one? They did take it out, and there is a thank you at the bottom of it too, but that's not the same thank you. So she's referring to the first letter.
It's the first letter. To answer your question specifically, it's the first letter.
Okay, thank you. I'll chime in. I appreciate the work that went into this. I try to look at everything from an objective standpoint also, and try to see there is an urgency. I actually like the form of the second letter better than the first, only because there's certain things I would wordsmith, but I think just, and I can show what those are. If you're looking at the first letter, first paragraph, little things like second line, COVID-19, it would be have been devastating. And then I was kind of questioning your occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants are battling, and I thought, well, what if I put something like, these are just suggestions, your occupational therapy practitioners, OTs and OTAs are working the front lines too, and they continue to provide essential services while trying to stay safe while balancing the needs of their family. And that last sentence, unfortunately, this past year and a half has caused burnout among many practitioners. I personally would put a period there and strike out the next one. But again, these are just like suggestions if we're looking at the first letter. So, and then on the, after occupational therapy students completing their level 2 fieldwork, as it starts at second half of the part, level 2 students located throughout the state are skilled and educated. So this one I kind of had just, I was a little worried only because in our regs and when people pass their boards, they're considered skilled licensed therapists. So I'm not familiar. We don't use the word skilled for students only because it's kind of a reg thing. Like we know once you pass the AOT evaluation, you become a licensed practitioner. We know that you're skilled because that's the whole meaning, the urgency of why level 2 fieldwork is secondary, right? Education. It's complements education. So I'm not sure I would use the word skilled only because of that. Again, just thoughts. And then second paragraph, California 15 plus occupational therapy programs an urgent need. Level fieldwork 2 rotations, we kind of call them level 2 fieldwork education in California, but that's just, you know, some thoughts. And I would probably end it, academic fieldwork coordinators from California OT and OT programs available to assist you, period. Because I thought, I like this last one, the last paragraph. The council was flexible, creative, and willing to help you build a fieldwork program from the ground up, which I think is powerful. They need to know that they're supported and the fieldwork council is there to help. And you go on to say the iterations of, hey, even if it's this practice area, and the council can create a program that will not only support, but invigorate and inspire your practice, which I think is a great way to end. And then kind of the same comments on the second letter, but I think it's, I don't know, the format of the second letter seems to flow better, and there's they've made some edits already. So that's just my thoughts. Those are just my thoughts on a whole. Just to contribute. Did anybody? I know Richard. Last week you had some comments on the letters. I didn't know if anybody. You do? Okay, go ahead.
I think this letter is where the Board of Occupational Therapy is recommending the Fieldwork Council to facilities, right, or to places that may be sources of placement. The who here kind of gets confusing to me because it starts off with, we would like to recognize you. Who's we? It's the CBOT, right? And it says securing occupational therapy student fieldwork placements can be challenging. Who's the who there? That's the fieldwork coordinators at the schools. And yet the effects of COVID-19 have been devastating to those trying to enter the profession. That's about people trying to enter the profession. So it kind of goes around from us to you, to the fieldwork coordinators, to the students, and then the occupational therapy assistants battling on the front lines. That's the employees. So it kind of goes in all these directions within just 2 sentences. And I'm, there's a lot of confusion among a lot of people. Don't know that CBOT and OTAC and AOTA aren't the same thing. They don't know the difference. And then now there's the Fieldwork Council as well. Is that part of the CBOT? Is that a separate organization? It's a separate organization. So I just think it could be more like, I think what Denise was saying, I agree with that point of like getting a little more to the point sooner here. Like, I mean, the key sentence in the first paragraph to me is the path. There are few new graduates to enter the profession to ease the burden. That's kind of it takes a while to get to that point, but I think you're trying to get them to help with a pipeline, right? So I would just like to move to that point a little sooner, and then we would like you to recommend this Fieldwork Council, which is not part of CBOT, and that should be to help you get place more students. Does that I mean, do we have any data on burnout or any statistics on how few new graduates to enter the profession to support those assertions? I think we do, but I mean, that we could use in a letter. Sharon, you're in a program, you're at Loma Linda. Do you have information on students who are not a percentage of students who couldn't finish their placements?
I think from our last meeting, Richard, there was information in the last meeting minutes, or according to the Fieldwork Council too, about how many students aren't able to. And we have some, and I'm sure Denise has some at Stanbridge too for the OTA students. And I think I know they're not able to get because of COVID and everyone's behind because of this transition. But this one says there are a few new graduates to enter the profession. I find that we have the survey, the exit surveys, that the students are, there's more students than there are jobs right now. And that's probably because people aren't sure if they're hiring, no one's turning over. Some people are leaving because of burnout. So it's kind of a mixed bag right now, according to what they're reporting for us.
The motivation of a lot of facilities to taking students is that they have someone to hire who knows their facility. If there are more students than there are jobs, that's a lower incentive for them to take a student, because they go through students because there's a shortage and they want to hire them, the good ones. And so I mean, just some kind of support, some kind of factual information about why they should take a student, and why they should be responsible for helping new graduates get placements. I'm not sure burnout, and I'm not sure these are.
I wonder what the board thinks of this. I'm asking a two-pronged question. The first part of my question is, when I suggest this, because we do not have a committee anymore for this, it's been suspended. So the first part of my question is, can Lynn Doe, who is the chair, and myself work on these letters and bring them back to the board, or do we have to bring the whole committee back together? I don't know if that's a Helen or a Heather question.
I'll have them chime in, Denise, but I know that happened with ours too, with the OTD. We met and then they didn't want to meet. And so then it was just up to us, is what I heard, that, hey, if you want to move forward with the information you have, the committee's like, tag, you're it, we're not coming back. So is that the same case? Is that something similar, whether Helen or Heather? I'll reiterate Denise's question also.
Well, to that point, Sharon, the reason I'm asking that question is you and Richard have both provided bountiful of information, which is great, and almost like redlining it. And so I just wonder, and Lynn, please step in, you're the chair of this, but I just wonder if it would be helpful if the board members are allowed to each redline the letter in the way they want to, send them to you, and then we work on them so that, and what's driving these comments is time was of the essence for this committee, and that's why it was formed, and that started back in the summer. So I'm trying, because time is of the essence, I'm now asking from a process standpoint if the board likes that idea, and secondly, if we can do that, and that's where I need Heather or Helen to tell us if we can proceed that way.
I would totally be open to that if that can be done, because I think the gist of the letter is great, but Richard's right. It's very confusing, and for someone who doesn't understand the whole process, it's like, where are they going with this? And as someone who's writing a dissertation, I can totally see that you need to be very specific when you're making these letters, because it can be misconstrued or misunderstood. So you want to get the message across very clearly. And Denise is right. The second letter is much more concise and to the point. And so if we can get this first letter to the same level as the second letter, then I think we're going to be in a good spot. Just the question is, we need the data that is in here, and decide if we want to use these numbers, not these numbers, but numbers in general when we are conveying this message. Because is the numbers that important to get the message across?
Helen, can you weigh in? Are we able to do that? Are we able to take our letters, wordsmith them each, and share them with the committee, and then they take all of our edits and thoughts, craft a new letter based on what we give, and then present that at our next meeting. Is that a possibility, knowing that the committee ended?
If I understand the question correctly, there is no committee, so this would be a meeting of two board members. I do not have the answer to that off the top of my head. I'd have to check in on that, and I ask Heather for her thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Even though that did recently change, this board, since I've been here, has always noticed the meetings of committees that were delegated, by the board. I want to say the exception, I believe, is the admin committee, but there have been work groups, committees, et cetera, that have gotten together to, discuss that. And I just want to pose one other option, since folks talked about reviewing the letters and redlining them, is that, the board could, since the committee is not meeting, the board could delegate to, even, for example, like to Lynna as the chair, to send the recommendation to her, and if you're comfortable with that, and authorize her to work with staff, to get the letter sent out, and then that way you're not waiting until the next February board meeting. That might be a thought also. Thank you.
So that's similar to what I just asked. Is it any different? Like, we could, if the committee made a motion or someone made a motion, that we could, Richard, I, whoever wants to contribute to drafting our version of the letter or redlining this and offering suggestions, and we could do that and then send it to the committee, and then they could work with you on drafting something for our next meeting. Is that correct?
I think
This
it's
is
not the
legal.
committee, it's specific to, just specific to me. So
Yes,
as
I'm
the board
sorry.
president, you would say you delegate it to board member Doe to take everyone's recommendations and redraft the letter, and then also work with staff to get this letter in a manner that is satisfactory to the board.
I agree. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
was-
this is
I
legal.
agree.
That would be my recommendation, just to err on the side of caution, is staff and a single board member who was previously appointed to work on this, as opposed to a meeting of, although two is generally not an issue, it's not something I'm comfortable with without getting approval, but I would be comfortable with staff and a single board member working together to provide a document to be brought back, if that's how the board wishes to proceed.
Okay, so that's helpful. Does anybody, is there any further discussion, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I can make a motion. I move that we the president appoints the chair of this committee and staff to work on wordsmithing this letter with the contributions of current board members that want to contribute to this letter, and sent to the appointed board member. I'm leaving my name out of it on purpose, just for the motion. And so we will have a satisfactory letter that we can approve as a board to send out to the individuals that we want to address this letter to.
Thank you, Lynna. There's a motion by Lynna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Was that you, Denise?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a second by Denise. Any other board discussion before we go to public comment?
I saw Heather's hand raised.
Oh, okay, thank you. Heather?
My apologies. I didn't take that down from earlier.
Oh, okay. Any other board discussion? No? Moderator, could we put the public comment section up?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. Okay, seeing no further discussion and no other further board discussion, am I correct? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Secretary Marcos, could we take a vote on the motion?
Richard Bookwater,
Aye.
Lena Doe,
I
Denise Miller, oh,
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Aye.
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
Beata Marcos, yes.
Motion carries for agenda item number 15. Thank you. And as promised, we are going to stop there and take a 45-minute lunch to return back at 1:15. And we will start with agenda item number 16. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, moderator, board staff, and my colleagues. I'll see you in about 40. Thank you, moderator. I hope everyone had a chance to have a nice lunch break. It is 1:15 on November 4th, and we're resuming our occupational therapy board meeting after lunch. But before we start, as always, Secretary Marcos, could we take roll call to make sure we have a quorum?
Of course. Richard Bookwater,
Here.
Lena Doe.
here.
I'm here.
Great, we heard you. Thank you, Richard. Denise Miller, I don't actually see her in part of the panelists. Okay. Jeff Farrell. I don't see Jeff either. Oh, Denise is here. Denise, are you here?
Maybe she's logging in to audio.
Okay. Meanwhile, Jeff Farrell, are you here? Nope. Sharon Pavlovich,
Here?
Beata Marcos here. Should we wait a few seconds for the other ones? Or?
Did we do Lina, Beata?
Yeah,
Oh, Lina, okay.
she's here.
Okay, so yeah, Denise, if you're here, please check in, and then I don't see Jeff yet.
So Denise just texted. She said that she needs to be promoted to the panelist. That she's been there waiting, but she needs to be promoted to the panelist.
Okay,
This is a moderator. I just promoted Denise, so she should be able to mute and unmute herself now.
Hi, I'm here. It's Denise. Are you still taking roll or has
Yeah.
that passed?
No, I'm still part of it. It's still part of it.
Here.
Great. So we're only missing Jeff Farrell.
okay, so we have a quorum, correct, Beata?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
hopefully, I know Jeff was taking a call during his lunch hour, so I'm sure he will join us soon. I look forward to him. I haven't heard from him, so I'm hoping he joins us soon, but we'll get started. We have other business to attend to here, and we'll see how we're moving along. Okay, we are starting with agenda item number 16, discussion on the Fieldwork Communications Work Group recommended amendments to Business Professions Code 2570.4 and 2570.6. And just as a reminder, there is AOTA public comment regarding this agenda item that was provided by AOTA. So I kind of want to open it up to the floor and to my colleagues to see where we would like to start the discussion.
I guess it should start with what the Fieldwork Communications Work Group is trying to edit to the code, and then we can discuss it and then open it up to get that public comment.
Okay, do you want to do that, Linda? Do you want to walk us through some of
Sure.
the steps? Okay, thank you.
Well, this was the first time I saw the code, but I think this is related to the fact that the committee was recommending that we recommend upping the supervision for fieldwork 2 supervisors for now the words just slipped my mind. Denise, can you help me? Look the word I'm looking for right now.
Can you say, let me turn my, can you say that?
Oh yeah, this is a recommendation that we wanted to expand to give the fieldwork 2 supervisors more PDUs. That's it. Thank you. Right?
So,
This is related to this,
Uh,
correct?
right, and
Yeah.
so, we can approach this one of two ways. We have addressed this in this committee as part of the OTD, or excuse me, as part of the Business and Professions Code. We also, as we know, have a future agenda item that's about the Business and Profession Codes, about supervision and PDUs. So we can address this separately now if you want, or we can wait when we're going to do all of that together, if it gives it a more robust and full picture.
Excuse me, this is a different item.
Sorry.
Yeah, this one's, I'm so sorry.
That's the point I'm making. It is a different item, and so that would mean we wouldn't have to go forth here. We would wait till February. But be that as it may, it sounds like everybody wants to address this now. So to your specific question, Lena, this came up as a recommendation to increase the PDUs for fieldwork coordinators who supervise students, level 2.
So that's where we are. And that's where this, I guess this is where we are, the committee was
Sorry,
recommending.
are we on
edits.
16? What item are we on?
16.
Pardon, this is Heather, if I may.
Item 16 is,
So I'm sorry, my apologies. If you go to page 2, the cover sheet has the wrong committee on it, but the heading of the board meeting materials has the correct one. This is not about PDUs. This is about Practice Act statute amendments proposed by the OTD committee.
Then that's not
Okay.
us.
That's not us. Okay.
That's not
I'm
us.
backing out now.
Heather, could you say, I'm sorry, so the title up here is correct that we're looking at, OTD Committee Recommendation Edits to Business and Professions Code, is that correct?
Yes, this is Heather. So as a reminder, when the committee information was presented at the last meeting, we only provided the section showing the changes. And so right here, you can see in front of your screen that these were the changes that were provided, except that it was not the entire section. It was only the amendments. So this new document shows the amendments to both 2570.4 and 2570.6. So here you can see in sub C, it talks about completing a supervised entry-level doctorate capstone experience. And then a little bit lower, in that new sub, there's some additional changes proposed in subsection D, and then there's a new proposed subsection E. Okay, so this was a recommendation from the committee. The board saw this a couple weeks ago, but they didn't see the entire thing.
Okay, sorry, Lena and Denise, I didn't catch the difference in that title for agenda item 16.
My apologies, the cover sheet was incorrect, but the document is correct.
Okay, so knowing that, this is the OT, everything, I mean, Heather just highlighted all the stuff, the recommendation edits to the Business and Profession Codes, 2574 and 2576. We can see what they are in strikeouts and added and underlined. So, and this accompanies the public comment from AOTA. So you'll see what the edits we made, and I think in the letter, there is a suggestion from AOTA. So any discussion on the documents, on the public comment amendment? What are your thoughts?
It's not on here because I sent it last night.
Heather, you're not on mute. Any questions on the edits that we see before us here?
This is Richard. I speak in support of the language here that was presented in under the heading of item 16. And I appreciate seeing it in the context of the rest of the legislation. I was interested in the section, the underlined section on this page, where it includes and all experiences approved by the board and arranged by any code accredited educational institution. So it gives the board some leeway in the future to identify conforming experience, training experiences that may not be captured in the current statute, but gives a little bit of leeway. And then at first I was like, what is that? But then I realized that gives us some leeway. Then the Aota comments, which came via email, talked about a person completing a supervised or mentored entry-level doctoral capstone experience would not be restricted. I do have a bit of a concern about or mentored, because one of the issues with this capstone project is that the program, the students are out there. These OTD candidates are out in the field working pretty independently, and they don't have a lot of supervision. So I'm not sure if a mentor, being a mentor is a lower level of oversight, I would say, than a supervisor. So I just wanted to bring that up, because the Aota proposes adding or mentored to match some other language, but somebody who's got a mentor, that means they're pretty independent, and who's regulating them? Who's really watching over the quality of their work and protecting the consumer in a mentorship relationship? And I just like to throw that out for a comment.
Thank you, Richard. I know this was a lot of interpretation of the A code standards, and this came up during the OTD committee meeting is how schools are taking into consideration the accreditation standards and building their program. There are some that have a program in place. The majority are in progress, right, of transitioning to their EOTD or entry-level doctorate program. So I'm interested to see other board members' comments regarding either the document or the AOTA paper. So thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else on the board that wants to comment on what we see before us in terms of AOTA's stance or suggestions, and then our agenda item?
This is Heather. If I can share, I apologize that this is not on the website. We just pulled this together yesterday. It was emailed to the board members last night, and we will get it added to the website. At the top of the language right here is an excerpt from the AOTA's, comment about this section. And then they've shown their suggestions in the track changes, not just about mentored, but also changing doctorate to doctoral. And then because in a track changes comment, which we can't make ADA compliant, we've copied it right here. So where it says AOTA comment, this was in the track changes comment at the side of the document. And so in response to this recommendation, we went ahead and copied and pasted the standards cited by AOTA, so the board would have that for their information. So I wanted to share that information with you, and we can move, wherever you would like us to navigate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Can you scroll down? Oh, we can scroll down. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting the blue. I'll try to see the blue. Oh, actually I can. Okay, right there. There you go. And maybe when we open it up to public, I don't know, do we still have public? Oh, we have some attendees, and they might be able to chime in. Kristen does have her hand up. If there's not a board discussion, I'd like it to open it up maybe to public comment, because Kristen is here from AOTA, and anybody else who would like to speak Is that okay, colleagues? No other discussion from the board? No, maybe Kristen might be able to share some light on some of Richard's questions and that we have from an AOT standpoint. Moderator, could we open up public comment, please?
Great. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up that Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And then, board president, did we want to do time limit here or kind of flexible with that?
If we can be flexible, that would be great. Thank you so much, moderator.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and request to unmute Kristen's mic since she has her hand raised. So Kristen, if you could please click that unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you all so much for this opportunity and to comment on this, and also for accepting our feedback. And I also apologize. I sent that the reason that I did send this to Heather yesterday. It was afternoon on my end. I'm not sure about the time difference on your end. So that's why it came to you kind of late and was not able to get on the board on the website. So that's partly my fault. So I take responsibility for that. But as you can see our suggested changes about the mentorship piece that came to us via ACOT. I shared this with our director of ACOT, and she suggested that we tweak those 3 references to supervised, or mentored to be consistent with the ACOT standard that Heather displayed in the document. I think it's ACOT standard D114 and D115, I think. And then the other tweaks that we suggested was, I think there was a couple places in the draft where it refers to doctorate, capstone experience, and that should be doctoral. I know it's a little picky, but that is what it's the official name. We confirmed that with ACOT as well. But I just also wanted to make myself available if you all had any questions. I'm glad to try to answer them. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. I actually have a question, Kristen. My understanding, and please, sure, I'd love to know your thoughts. I know there's been a lot of discussion on the Capstone Experience, and I think where AOT is coming from, and trying not only to match ACOT standards, but because we know capstones can go in multiple directions and depending on what the school is doing. So for instance, if you are actually doing program development as part of your capstone experience, well, then that lends to being supervised, right? Because you're going to be working with clients and those kinds of things, right, versus when you're mentored, you could be mentored if you're capstone experience and you choose, let's say, to do a leadership and advocacy track. You're not necessarily working with clients, but you will be mentored under a faculty member who does that. And so is that the delineation, the suggestion between supervised or mentored? Is that the part of the impetus?
Yeah, I think so. Let me speak from my personal experience. I had a doctoral student work with me at AOTA a few years ago. He was a young man who's now a practicing OT in Tennessee. And it occurs to me that while I was working with him, he worked in our policy department. He did not see clients. As you said, he was working on his dissertation or thesis, whatever the term is, while he was working at AOTA. But he did policy work for us and research, and he referred to me throughout his experience as his mentor. So that's probably where that comes in, why it's in the standard versus why they're advocating for it to be put in the regulate or the statute rather. And I mean, I will say he was not working with clients. And if quite honestly, if this was an experience where he was working with clients, I would have suggested one of the other OTs in our office work with him because I'm not a clinician. I would have preferred that he have that, a better level of supervision. But, he was able to work somewhat on his own, doing research, and we met on a weekly basis to go over what he was doing, and he sent me fairly regular updates. He went to meetings with other members of the staff and advocated for OT and listened and learned as well. So if that can alleviate anyone's concern, but like I said, in that situation, I was considered his mentor. I'm imagining, I guess I have not had, or I'm not familiar with, I guess the terminology is if you're working with clinicians or with clients, like you said, then you're being more formally supervised. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that would be consistent with what you're asking, Director Pavlovich or Chair Pavlovich.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Richard, is that what your understanding is, do you think, maybe? Or anybody on the board? Since Richard posited the question, anybody can chime in, but do you kind of get that feeling, or?
I'm just, you have me looking up mentor, what the ACOT definition of mentorship. I mean, if it is a consumer protected, if a mentor is the point of contact for the capstone, for the OTD student, or yeah. So one of the key issues for this was we had a group of OTD people, OTD students who are going out there, and they weren't regulated, they weren't licensees because they hadn't passed the exam yet. They hadn't gotten they weren't licensees. So, and then they weren't in an ACOT accredited program. They were maybe in an ACOT accredited school, or institution. They have other ACOT accredited programs, but we didn't have any ACOT accreditation there, so they weren't in an ACOT accredited program, and they didn't have a license. So who was protecting the consumer in that situation? And so one of the impetus for doing all this was to say, well, okay, they were accredited by other agencies, so the school is kind of the umbrella. The education program is kind of the umbrella for taking care of them. So if mentorship provides adequate consumer protection equal to what supervision by does in a fieldwork, in a capstone experience, then I'm okay with this. But I don't. But that's my question.
Any anybody want to chime in? I'm going to actually ask Heather Martin her thoughts too, but I wanted to see if the board, my colleagues had any other, and that seems to be the big thing. Like, is the protection, consumer protection, equal under mentored and or doctoral capstone experience or supervised? And Heather, I mean, you've been part of this conversation as well. Looking at that, this is on the Business and Professions Code. If it's okay to ask your thoughts?
Yeah. While I understand the recommendation from AOTA and the use of the term mentored in the ACOT guidelines, I would just suggest that a supervisor could be a mentor, but from an individual who considers himself only a mentor and not a supervisor, that's very difficult to regulate, right? And I feel that the ACOT guidelines for the educational institutions are worded a little bit more flexible in order to give the institutions like flexibility in how they design and implement and carry out their program. But from a regulatory standpoint, if there was a violation, that would be challenging. And while I understand that there's this difference or distinction between a capstone experience that is clinically based versus, advocacy based or research based, my suggestion, and I think, deferring to Helen would actually be best, but personally, I think it's too hard to regulate mentored. I feel like it's a little bit softer term and is not clearly delineated, despite the fact that I understand that the capstone does require the parties to, to sign an agreement about the responsibilities. But, without access to that information on the surface, I would just suggest that even if somebody in an advocacy, completing their capstone in an advocacy role, that they are still assigned a supervisor, and that even if they refer to the individual as a mentor, that we, stick with the term supervise. And I'll defer to Helen on the rest. Thank you.
That's helpful. Helen, would love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
So I would echo what Heather said. It is certainly easier to regulate supervised over mentored without a lot of regulation. Supervised as it is can get a little flexible. Directly supervised, supervising, supervised by the person's supervisor. How do I say that? 2 ranks up. And then, but mentored, I, as an attorney, could technically mentor someone on the East Coast I've never met and work with them and provide guidance and assistance and advice. I also understood that the standard stated a minimum guidance of supervision or mentor. Is that accurate? At a minimum, plans for supervision or mentoring. And so I do not see a conflict with the standard if we go greater than minimum with supervision in particular, but it does depend upon what the board would like. Would you like supervision where someone is directly monitoring this person in some way, or mentoring, at which point we may need regulations to determine what mentoring is to the board?
Yeah, I thought there might have to be a delineation, so it's very clear what what is meant in regards to mentoring, especially when it's because all this, a majority of the schools are moving in the direction of the doctoral program. That's helpful too, Helen. Before we open up to public comment, any more comments from anybody on our board?
The comment that I have is in support of what the comments were made by our executive officer, Heather Martin. I agree that the statement that speaks to me the most is, although we appreciate this feedback and we always look for alignment with our professional associations as we keep the consumer safe, most importantly, this is a regulatory language and we have to be more certain. So I agree with both Heather and Helen. And if you're looking for a motion, have we adopted the word mentor? Just to understand the sequence of this, has that been adopted, or was that just included for our reading purposes because of the letter we received from AOTA?
It's the latter, Denise. Nothing in the AOTA has been adopted. The only thing that we have coming forth is the language from the amendments from our last meeting before us as terms of the OTD document, committee recommendation, but not from AOTA. Does that help?
So when you asked for the board to weigh in, you were asking us to weigh in on these comments, correct?
Yeah, so we were just going to pair them. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then nothing is needed at this point. I'll wait to see what action you want to take, and then.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? I think Denise sounds like she might be ready to make a motion. Just want to make sure that we heard everybody's voice. If so, moderator, can we open it up for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. Looks like we have a request from Kristen again. So Kristen, once again, I will request to unmute your microphone.
Hi all, thank you for that feedback. I guess my question is then, if you're not going to accept the supervision or mentorship amendment, are you all okay with the minor amendment of doctoral or doctorate to doctoral? There's a couple occurrences of where it says doctorate. And like I mentioned earlier, the actual correct term is doctoral. I know it's something small, but this is one other thing that Chuck Wilmarth and I specifically asked ACODE, because I still hear occasionally from people calling it a DEC, the doctoral experiential component. So we asked them specifically which one is the correct term. Since this is going in statute, we wanted to make sure we had the term correct. And they came back and said it is doctoral capstone experience. And then I noticed there was just a typo in a couple other places. So I wanted to flag that for you all before you voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I'm actually, thank you for bringing that up. I had a note here, but I'm in favor of changing it to doctoral. That is the language. So I think that came up during our discussion as well. So yes, we can substitute the word doctorate in this document for, I mean, that's just my opinion. We have a whole board to hear from, but to doctoral, if that is in alignment with what other board members think or agree
And
with.
to be clear, my comment was not to review, not to remove supervised or mentored. It was only to remove the word mentored.
And then Denise, are you okay with doctoral?
Yes.
Doctorate? Yes, okay.
Mhm.
So Denise and I are on the same page. Anybody else have any comments based on what Kristen just shared?
Says Richard, I speak in favor of doctoral instead of doctorate. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There's no other board discussion. I think there might be a motion, and I put an extra, we'll have to take public comment after the motion anyway, but so moderator, please keep that open in case, you know, someone wants to say something after the vote. But Denise, did you want a positive motion or anybody want a positive motion?
I'm happy to make a motion. This is Richard. I propose that I move that the board adopt the language in item 16 in our meeting materials and change doctorate to doctoral within that that text with that one change in the text presented in the meeting materials under item 16.
There's a
I
motion,
second.
and there's a motion by Richard, a second by Denise. Any other board discussion before I ask one more time for public comment? Okay, I'll ask for public comment now to see if they have any last words they want to share.
All right, this is the moderator. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And I will pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it looks like we do have a request from individual identified as Lindsay. Lindsay, I'll request to unmute your microphone. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears. All right, and you are unmuted.
Okay, I guess my question was if removing the word mentor affects current OTD students performing their capstone right now. I'm currently a second year in an OTD program, and we were told during our capstone exploration class this year that we would have an internal mentor and an external mentor. So I guess I was wondering how the change of language would affect that, or if it would.
I think, Lindsay, thank you for being here, one, for showing up as a student and chiming in. That's taking your advocacy to the next level. Good for you. And my board mates can chime on board, or legal or Heather. I think what I'm understanding is because in the current language, if adopted, mentorship kind of is part of the supervision process. So we're all about consumer protection. So if we leave the language, you know, supervise, it doesn't change that you can have a mentor or not. It does hold accountable that there still has to be some kind of supervision in spite of the relationship you have been, you know, if you have a mentor, some people, I forget what else they're calling it, but in your experience, it should not, is my understanding, Heather, please correct me if I'm wrong, that it just means that there needs to be supervision no matter what kind of relationship is in that capstone. So whether it's a mentor relationship or whether you are out there doing program development, irregardless of what that is, that it has to be under some level of supervision is my understanding. Richard?
Legal
Well, the other thing is
controls.
this is a regulation that takes 18 months to become a regulation. So anybody currently in a program would this regulation won't be in effect until it is, which is some time down the road. So so school education programs right now, there's this limbo happening and everybody's still in it, and that will continue. But and there will certainly be, Lindsay, would you be finishing your program before the middle of 2023?
This is a moderator. I have to request for her to unmute again.
I'm supposed to graduate in August of 2023.
So it wouldn't take effect. It probably wouldn't take effect until the very end of just before your graduation, at maybe the earliest.
This is Heather. If I may, I did want to clarify that this is proposed recommendations to the OT Practice Act. This is not regulations. And one of the reasons the OTD committee sort of fast-tracked this, if you will, was for the board's consideration of these legislative amendments, and then a subsequent conversation about the board whether or not they wanted to include it under legislative proposals provided through the sunset review process. Thank you.
Lindsay,
So,
go
Heather,
ahead.
does that mean 2022 possibly?
No, that'd be January 2023 would be the soonest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay, does that help? I think maybe you're muted, but I'm hoping that helps a little bit. Are there moderator? I'm sorry.
She wrote in the Q&A, yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when she mutes herself, it locks the microphone for her, and then I have to request to unmute again.
Okay. She's used to class, I can tell. Every time you move, she has proper manners.
One more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing, Lindsay, if you get your license, then you don't have to worry about this. If you get your license, then that solves the whole problem.
Thank you, Richard. Lindsay, I hope that helps. Moderator, are there other people that want to chime in on public comment before we go to our vote?
It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. And Richard, can I just clarify, just to make sure, we had the motion with the second, just to make sure. So all the amendments that are underlined were okay with you. And then with the addition on both pages, right, of the amended language, they're all okay, in addition to changing the word doctorate to doctoral, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Heather, is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. We have a motion, we have a second. Secretary Marcos, do you mind taking a vote?
Richard Bookwalter,
Aye.
Lena Doe,
Aye.
Denise Miller,
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Aye.
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
Beata Marcos, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, public, for chiming in. Your thoughts are always valued. Really appreciate that. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 17, discussion and evaluation of criteria listed for appointment of committee members as specified in the board member guidelines and procedure module. So this came before us at our last meeting in the effort of trying to glean more qualified applicants to kind of fill those committees. We looked at it, we discussed with the board that maybe 5 years of professional experience and those kinds of things might have been a little outdated. And so this was some of the stuff we suggested at our last meeting in order, again, to try to fill those committees, looking at changing 5 to 3 years of professional experience, noting that an occupational therapist or an occupational therapy assistant whose license was placed on retired status within 5 years of holding an active license, because we honor the process that people that are retired still have, things to contribute within the parameters of 5 years. And so those were the changes there, again, to try to help us fill our committee. So what are your thoughts on the language that was amended here? And are we okay with this, or is there other discussions or thoughts that we want to put forward?
This is legal. This would be more of a policy decision. There's nothing prohibited about this that I'm aware of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Helen, what do you mean? I'm so sorry. When you say policy, we don't have to, we could talk about it, but we don't have to take a vote. Is that what you mean?
I guess I'm misunderstanding the question. So you're not asking about my opinion of the text.
Oh, well, I'm always value your opinion. Is there something in there that's,
No,
yeah?
that's what I'm saying. I don't, unless it was illegal or prohibited by law somehow, I wouldn't have a comment.
Okay, okay.
But then, so what specifically is the question?
Oh, I was just seeing if we were okay with the suggested language for looking at the qualifications for trying to fill committee member qualifications.
Okay. Yeah, that would be more of a topic that legal cannot weigh in on.
No, no worries.
Hi, this is Heather. Sharon, can I just qualify? I'm sorry, can I please clarify?
Yeah.
The information displayed here in the strikeout and the underline, and I'm sorry I missed the capital T on the 3, but this is what staff is presenting back to the board based on prior discussion about the committee member qualifications criteria. So if the board thinks that this looks like what they requested, then when we bring back the manual, for additional changes in its entirety, but we were asked to bring this back, and that's what this top part of the page is about. It's kind of a two-part thing, because one of them was there was discussions about reducing the qualifications for licensees, and then there was discussion about a public member appointment criteria, and that's at the second part of the page.
When you say second part, Heather,
Well, down below, it says there's language regarding non-licensee public member committee appointment criteria.
Mhm.
And so we provided the information from the PT board and the speech board. But that was and then it lists the, scroll down. Then so what the board said is they needed information about what to do about the criteria when considering non-licensees to be on a committee.
Heather, we can't hear you. So sorry. I think you maybe moved away from the mic.
I'm sorry, I have a mask on. I apologize.
No.
So two things, the 4 bullet points, the question is, does that look like the recommendations that the board made at the May meeting for licensees? Again, to expand the criteria by reducing the number of years for professional experience, as well as adding in OTs or OTAs who were on retired status for less than 5 years. So that's one thing. The other thing is, though, in asking about the for non-licensees, public members, we provided information for PT board, speech board, and then we looked up Board of Behavioral Sciences, Dental Hygiene Committee, and Respiratory Care Board. They didn't have any criteria for non-licensee committee members.
Okay. So to answer your first question, yes, I think it captures the discussion that we had. How are my other colleagues feeling about that from our discussion at our previous meeting? For the first 4 bullets.
No, you don't.
Anybody else think it captures what we talked about? No, yes. Ooh, I think no comment. I don't know if no comment means that we're okay with it. I don't want to assume or infer. Well, Heather, I'll go. I guess maybe the only I think that it does capture that for your first part.
Okay, perfect.
And second is the thing if we still want that language, non-licensee public member appointment criteria. We have the PTs, The composition, I know this was always also meant to help increase the maybe qualified committee member qualifications. Does anybody have thoughts on that? Maybe we don't need it. It was brought to us by board staff. If you guys are okay with just the bullets, or does anybody want to be inclusive in terms of adding a non-licensee public member to these committee members? Any thoughts on that, or can we scratch that? What do you guys think? No thoughts from the board? Maybe we'll open it up to public comment, maybe, to see if they have any thoughts on the matter.
All right, this is the moderator. Oh, I do see a hand raised from Lena Doe.
Yes, my thoughts about the non-public member on, a non-licensed person, public member on a committee is, number one, most public members that are not in the profession or have no interest in the profession are not going to know about it. So that's something we should think about if we want to keep a non-licensed public member on eligible for committees. And it's on the positive side, it'd be good to get someone that, is interested in, the profession, consumer protection, and or has experience in one of the committees that we have in some other field. That'd be great. But it just makes a little bit more difficult to recruit them. And so those are just my thoughts on that.
So Lena, would you be opposed to just leaving that out? Do you think it's not warranted enough to include a public member at this point?
At this point, I don't think it's warranted.
Okay.
I think we might want to revisit it later, because if we have difficulties filling these committees, as we see that, sometimes the committees dissolve because members that are in the field are busy because in the academic part or something like that. So maybe we do want to revisit it in the future.
Okay.
As we are progressing, but right now I don't think it's necessary. But those are just my thoughts.
Okay, I appreciate the comments. Thank you so much, Lena.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, just to clarify, so no, do you need a motion on this? Would it help?
Well, no, because so this is a carryover from the May meeting, and in the May meeting, for example, Secretary Morcos had indicated she thought committees should have public members, right, to even out the voting process, among other things. One of the things we were also asked to bring back is, what would a public member, look like, which is why we brought the information from the PT and speech boards. And as you may recall, when there was discussion about not the Fieldwork communications work group, but the other Fieldwork committee that looked at alternatives, Matt Leger from the healthcare workers at SEIU, he was a very helpful person, and he was actually on that committee with, Jeff Farrow and Ada Boone-Hurl, a number of people. And so when board staff was tasked with reaching out to that original committee that hasn't met for, gosh, I don't even know, maybe 3 or 4 years, but to see who would be interested, he was not asked, because as a non-licensee, he couldn't be on there. And so one of the things that was asked is that, we asked, how revisit the topic of how many non-licensees should be allowed to participate on a committee, who is included under the non-licensee as well. And that, again, that's from the May meeting. And I believe, I recall it was Richard who talked about, well, once somebody was no longer licensed or had been retired for more than 5 years, then they could possibly come back, as a public member. And one of the other comments, I believe, from board member Lena Doe was that, she talked about, if you're going to have, members of the public, that they have some healthcare experience. And so I'm just kind of providing the context of why this was brought back, and certainly that the board can choose to not do, anything further. I just kind of wanted to give some context of, what we're providing.
No, that's very helpful. And I think I think there's a way to vet both of what Lena had suggested and what you had suggested. I think there is some power, and especially if we can vet, kind of like we vet the people now. There's a criteria for our board member licensees, right, to be on the committee, and what that looks like. We have it outlined here. And if we had something very similar for a public member, then that could eliminate some of the concerns Lena had. Like some people don't know what we're doing. I don't know if they would be kind of not value added, but they might not understand, or the role and the contributing might be limited versus an example like you gave with Matt Leger, right? He would be really powerful because he's familiar with the apprenticeship process and the board and those kinds of things. So I personally think that there's a way to do that for a public member too, to vet them to see if they can offer some contributions that would be very sound to a committee member. So I like what the board brought. Thank you for bringing forward the bullets. And I mean, Lena, I think there's a way to kind of make
No,
things work.
I agree. I
Okay.
just don't want to make it difficult, but I think everyone has something to contribute, and if someone wants to be on a committee for the CBOT board, board committee, then that means they have some kind of interest or some kind of passion. So I mean, they wouldn't come from nowhere, right?
Right. Okay. Any other board discussion before I open it up to the public?
This is Richard. I just kind of like the sentence and the speech board language that says appointment of non-board members to a committee is subject to the approval of the board, because that gives the opportunity. I mean, that may be a way in between. I mean, I don't have a problem with for people, specific people who may not be licensees coming in, but that would be a way to get a little extra approval, which we don't necessarily do. We don't do for the rest of the presidents of board appointees.
Mm-hmm.
If we wanted to take that extra measure just for that population.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Any other comments from our board? Moderator, could we open it up for public comment?
This is the moderator, and members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. So Heather, I said you don't need a motion, but can you bring it back on our next one so we can then vote on our next one with maybe the public language that Richard had highlighted? That the discretion of the board, there's
Yeah.
just an interest. Can we bring that back and then just have it in its entirety ready to kind of look at? That's okay? Okay.
We will do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, that is agenda item number 17. And moving on to agenda item number 18, discussion and evaluation of board member per diem policy as specified in the board member guidelines and procedure manual, the process of requesting per diem, and review of the form to calculate time spent. Heather or Helen, do you have any background? I mean, we've been here before, but I don't know if you wanted to start us off with anything before we jump in.
Yes, if this is Heather, if I may, I would appreciate that.
Yes, please.
So I have to first apologize about the mistake that I made during the May meeting. So during that time, not only was I very sick, and I apologize because, out of obligation to the board, I didn't, call out of that meeting. And so I did a great disservice to both the board in terms of the quality of information provided and, to myself for, trying to stay on top of that meeting. And so mistakes were made. And fortunately, the mistake about the motion passing is correctly reflected in the May minutes. That being said, as part of the research for this item, and we've provided this in the meeting materials, We provided the information that was an excerpt from the October of 2018 meeting minutes, where it talked about making amendments to the per diem section. So we have the meeting minutes. We also have the supporting meeting materials from that same meeting. The following item is from February of 19, where the board adopted the motion to remove board president from the per diem policy. Now, I have to, and this, and my apologies for that, except that what I have to say is what became apparent in researching this issue and going back to past minutes is that there was changes made at that meeting that were not reflected in the board member manual the board had before them in May of 2021. And so what had happened was the board did vote on adding in the language that said board members could earn per diem for time spent when preparing for meetings. Okay. So that's what this sequence of events is showing you here. And so what we did was, if you go down about 7 or 8 pages, at the top the heading says Board Administrative Manual brought to the February 19 meeting. Again, we had issues showing the track changes in an ADA format, which is why it's yellow and green. To show yellow, removing it, and green, adding it. So here you can clearly see it says the board in paragraph 1. Just one moment, please. We want to get the screen. One second. And so in paragraph 1, towards the bottom, I'm sorry, item number 1 is saying that the in payment of per diem or reimbursement, and obviously now I would recommend we do remove the word salary, but in paragraph number 1, it says board members shall, because the word not was removed, shall be paid for time spent preparing for board and committee meetings. That information was voted on in February of 19. That is not the information that the board members had before them at the May meeting. And so what became apparent was not only did we not provide you the most updated information, we need to, revisit the entirety of this issue. And unfortunately, in the May minutes also, due to at the time, even though the minutes reflected that the motion passed to remove board president from paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 regarding the approval process, later on in that same meeting, then there was a motion to bring back the item in its entirety to the board for consideration. And when speaking to Attorney Helen Joffrey, one of the things we talked about is that, yes, the minutes are displayed correctly for May 2021, but in terms of allowing a reader, some future reader, to understand why there's a motion passed earlier in the meeting and then later on it's being brought back, she agreed that, that we could make a footnote to the May 2021 meeting minutes to reflect that in a way that somebody who wasn't aware of this could actually read, and follow this. So all of that being said, that's one thing we want to talk about. The even though this is not directly part of this agenda item 18, but want to talk about adding a footnote to the May minutes, but also review the per diem policy given the best practices shared today by Deputy Director Carrie Holmes. That's another thing. So, and also in the materials is a board member attendance / task log. And at the May meeting, staff was asked to remove the reference to the board president. And so we have done that. So one more issue to consider is the
Heather, we might have lost your,
I'm sorry, I'm on Wi-Fi in the office. One of the things to, consider is this attendance form. There was also discussion, but no final decision about whether or not to include the start and end time or just identify time. So that's one more issue. And then once this process of approval and what information is wanted, my recommendation would also be to include this form as part of the manual, as like an addendum or an attachment to the manual, so that it could not be changed by board staff or a board member, but instead would need an entire board vote. And that's one of the reasons to keep the process consistent. One of the reasons I recommend adding it to the memo. So lastly, because when we were asked previously to provide information on what other boards do, we had reached out to 6 boards and only 2 boards got back to us. So also in the materials, what we have is information from the Board of Vocational Nurses, the Physical Therapy Board, Pharmacy Board, and Respiratory Care Boards. And so you have that information in front of you. The BVNPT, LVN, licensing board, we have provided both the language from their manual as well as the form they use to turn in. Following that, we have the extract from the Physical Therapy Board manual. And then we also have an excerpt from the Pharmacy Board manual. And thank you to Carrie Holmes, who she mentioned they have almost monthly brown bag meetings because this issue was the topic at a meeting on September 1st. There were several boards who did provide information, and so she was happy, to share that with us all. And then the last one, of course, is the Respiratory Care Board member form. Of the 4 boards presented, 3 do have board president approval, and only the Respiratory Care Board one doesn't. So I realize that's a lot. I hope I didn't gloss over it too fast, but I also didn't, bog you down in details. Thank you.
thank you, Heather. No, I think it gives us an all-inclusive picture because this was a huge topic of conversation. My apologies going out to Deputy Director Carrie Holmes. I addressed her by just her name and not her title earlier. My sincere apologies. So knowing that, colleagues, there's a lot before us in this document. I know that's been a point of conversation. So where do we want to start the discussion? Silence mean no discussion to be had?
It means I'm fine.
So what I'm gathering is before us, from all that information, what I'm gathering is before us, working backwards. We've had a couple of we've had a couple of motions and votes in there, and that's taken us out of alignment with what's in the policy, with what we voted for. More importantly, with what we've now been informed with this new information is best practice by DCA. So I wonder if what's before us is if we need to get in order this policy and procedure and form with the best practices of DCA. Is that a way to proceed?
I definitely think that's an option, Denise, because you're right. The voting was not in alignment with what was in the board manual, when Richard and I were on that, but we do have a form, right, if you're going to conferences and stuff like that. But we also know that it's to be in alignment with the manual, and, there are no, really per diems, including for most committees too, and to prep and reading materials and that. So I would say yes to, your comment in terms of what's before us in alignment. Yes. Any other comments or anybody wanting to chime in on any of the policies and procedures here? Especially if we base on Deputy Director Holmes's discussion this morning, we appreciate the comments and the discussion that DCA is having regarding same policies and procedures, including per diem. And we have the information from the boards before us as well. So is the move then to kind of go in alignment with our current board manual? Because if so, then we would need a motion. Or if there's any other discussion, because it was quite a heated discussion last time. Not me heated, but robust, I should say.
Well, just to be fair, it's not what's before us is not our current and board manual, because we did have a vote that passed to remove board president. But it sounds like best practices is to have board president in there, but it also sounds like in true practice, it's what we've all been, the point we've been having as a sticking point has been board president or executive director. And from what I'm understanding, it's really in reality a two-step verification process, which involves both. So probably there's not much discussion, because perhaps if other board members make sense, or we just go to the place of, I don't know how you want to approach this. If Heather can weigh in, if we want to approach it from the minute standpoint, if we want to approach it from looking at the board manual. But again, I do, for all the work that's been done, I do want to make sure that we note that this isn't what is our current, what we voted on. So we need to make it current.
Correct, Denise.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm sorry, this is Heather. And just to clarify, correct, you are correct, Denise. This is not current with what the vote was, but neither is this displayed as being presented to you for, this is not suggesting this is what was reflecting of the May materials. This was brought back to as this is what you were provided when making that vote. Just to clarify.
May I ask a question? The blue and the green, is that current language? If you eliminate the I'm sorry, the blue, the yellow and the green, the document from the February.
One moment, we're going to that page in the materials. The language here, which the board did not have in May of 2021, is a result of what was decided in February of 19. And I apologize that when we brought the manual to the board for discussion, the board didn't have this. And and the reason this was important to share with you, not only because we're taking accountability for our mistake, but more importantly, part of this conversation over the past meetings has been, well, if you don't get per diem for time spent preparing for a meeting, then why do you need the form, right? And I say that kind of like historically, if you will, but to the point that we didn't have the information saying you get time for, that you get time can earn per diem for time spent preparing for the meeting. That's why it was important for us to show you this, because like I said, when doing the research about the form and the approval process, that's when it was determined that the information we provided the board for vote in May was not correct. So this information is simply the latest version of the manual, even though the vote happening in May to say remove the board president is not displayed. So
And-
I guess it's kind of a hybrid. It's
so
the
my
current
question-
policy, but it's not the latest vote.
Yes, so what, so the, I don't, so what I don't understand, so this was, before that vote, this was the language
Right.
that was official. And then after the vote, is this still the language that's official because the vote didn't have a quorum? I guess I'm just not clear on that. Because we were told by legal that it wasn't, we didn't have a quorum, and then, but the minutes say the motion passed. So I'm very confused about where this, what this means now. Is this current or is it not current?
This information is current as of February 19 extract from the manual. It does not reflect the May 2021 vote. And in terms of the minutes are factually correct that the motion passed. And that's one of the things we can circle back on about, adding the footnote. So what would have been, what would have been correct was if the board was provided this information when it voted on the materials back in May of 2021. And so we are not presenting this information. It says it's from the February 2019. We did not update the manual further because the board didn't even know that the information they had in May was incorrect, if that makes sense.
Well, so my
what
vote,
would be-
so my vote in May was to retain president, and I would like, and I have that, that's reinforced by reading what the other boards are doing, but that would require another motion to restore that. I mean, the board would have to vote to restore president then?
That is correct.
Okay.
And just if I may, to clarify what's before the board in terms of what we saw, although this is a February 2019 document, we had until May 2020, there was no more work on this document, correct?
That is correct.
So the only change, if we were to look for our purposes of our discussion and what might end up as a vote, if we were to look at February 2019 and then, based on best practices, if there's a motion to restore, this particular policy probably has more of the language that we discussed and wanted, more of the bulk of our thoughts than May 2020. Would that be or May 2021,
Yes.
whatever that was?
You are correct.
Okay.
You are correct. The one, so, and to further add to that, a vote would be necessary to, insert back in board president. But secondly, I would like the board to review the form and I request that the board actually make a decision about the form and then, include that as part of the motion about including the form into the manual. And, insofar as the separation of duties and or accountability, I'm sorry, 1 second here. That further down in this policy after, item number 3 and before item number 4, which could be a new 5, is that we add information about the board members, provide the information to the executive officer who could, in bulk, provide them to the board president, unless the board, wanted to send them directly to the president and then, then to the executive officer. But again, to insert additional, layer and accountability, if you were, then you could expand on that process just a bit.
So Heather, just
Thanks.
to make clear, there's like 3 hard asks here. What Denise had said and Richard, there'd be a motion of some sort to include board president back in this process. In addition to that 2-layer, the board president, and then it's reviewed by executive officer as a 2-step process. That is one hard ask. The other one is footnotes in the meeting. So because we recognize that this is kind of back and forth, and so to add footnotes so that someone outside seeing this can follow the order of, the current meeting. And then that's the second hard ask. And then the third ask is to include the board member attendance log as part of the manual. Am I understanding correctly?
That is correct. And the only clarification is the item before the adding the form to the manual, about the footnote. The footnote would be for the May meeting minutes, not for this one.
Correct. So those are three things as I understand it. Heather's confirmed it. It kind of aligns with the discussion that Denise and Richard brought to the table. So knowing that, where are we?
Well, this is Richard. We also talked about maybe eliminating the start time and end time from the form. And just
That is correct. And that's one of the items that was not voted on at the May meeting. And that's one of the reasons I'm asking if the board could review that and decide, I believe, ending the start and end time. So yeah, I would just,
I would support that. I think it's unnecessary to have those two columns if you have the total time.
Just give us one moment. We'll pull up that form again so folks can take a look at it.
And while she's doing that, so Richard and Denise and our footnotes for the May meeting, board member attendance log in the manual, but then amended because we already have total time, getting rid of start time and end time. That two-step process verification that Denise was talking about, board president going to the executive officer. I think that captures all four so far. There it is. So there it is. So Richard had just suggested amendments, strike out. We don't need start and end time. It's kind of redundant because we have total time. Correct, Richard?
That's what I would be happy with. I would be fine with that.
Heather, do you need all those things in one motion or four separate motions or however it pleases the board?
I would recommend separate motions just because there could be different votes on different items.
Okay.
I can move that we remove the start time and end time columns from this form.
I'll second that.
A motion by Richard, a second by Beata. Moderator, is there any other board discussion before I go to public comment on the motion that's before us? Moderator, can you open it up for public comment?
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Moderator, can we leave it open? Just we're going to be going back and forth on
Sure
some
thing.
motions. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, Beata, can we take a vote on the motion before us?
Yes, Richard Bookwater,
Aye.
Lena Doe, Lena, we cannot hear you. Oh,
Sorry, aye.
good. Denise Miller,
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Yes.
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
Beata Marcos, yes.
Okay, motion carries. That's one motion. We have three other discussion points. Does anybody want to make further motions?
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this because I received the documents very late last night, the ones in front of us. So we went through so many meetings talking and discussing this. Then in May, the motion passed because we did have a quorum that was clarified later on. And so now that's basically a moot point because the president has to be part of it. Yes?
I don't know
Or are we doing this because other boards are doing it this way and only one board is doing it differently? So that's kind of where I want to. So is this our only option that the executive officer, the two-step process, and the president is signing it? Or can it be just the executive officer? And again, is it because it's the law within that what we received, our guidelines, or is it because the other boards are doing it, so we're doing it?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'll chime in and then wait for Heather or whatever. I think it's a combination of a little bit of all those, but we didn't have all the correct board materials in front of us. Now we do. We know that there was a process in place that already said board president, and then kind of, it can go to board staff, but it wasn't very clear. Now we have that. Now we have all the information from the other boards who don't reimburse for time prep and stuff, except one, respiratory. The others don't. So I think that new information's here too. I think to answer your question, I don't think that's the only option, but I know a new motion is either we can keep the motion that was there or create a new one is my understanding, and please Helen or Heather chime in, just trying to help you out.
To Beata's point, no, it's not a requirement. The board made a motion that passed at the May meeting to replace the board president with the executive officer in the per diem policy. And that stands unless or until there's a motion for something different.
Well, I'm sorry, if the motion passed, then it should be part of our manual already. So why are we trying to redo the vote and another motion? I'm not understanding this. Like, why are we spending so much time talking about something, passing something, now going back to it, and then kind of like talking about it without even like much clarity? Why are we I know I'm confused.
I think
Can I help out in answering that? Because I've having Beata, if I can help clarify that, because I know we had a similar position. I think at the same time that our board was examining this, DCA was also examining this. And DCA has found in their work around this that there are other boards that what they've defined as best practice includes the board president and also that process. Even though it's written as board president, that process has the executive officer in there. There's always a check and balance within that. There are still other boards that don't have the board president do it. So to answer your question, we could go down that path, but I think what's being presented before us today is now that we have all this new information, now that we see where the other boards are going, where do we want to line up as a board on this issue? And to do that, we're going to have to do some things.
But I don't understand why do we have, I respect DCA and everything, but I don't understand. I mean, we're our board, we have our own laws and regulations. Why do we have to align with other? They can do whatever they want to do. They can have 5 people approving this. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to, this is what I'm not clear about. Like, is that the law that requires us, no, we have to go in and we have to reinstate the president to be part of it, or we just move on from here because our motion passed. And we're just gonna have the executive officer signing off on this. So that's why I'm not sure. I respect DCA and the laws, and they were looking into it, but we as the board were also looking into it with legal and everything. It's not like we just came up with something. It took us many years to get here. So we deliberated for many years, and now it's kind of being taken away because of the other boards. That's what, it doesn't make sense to me. We're our own board. We don't share regulations. We don't share, we don't do that. So that's why I want to clarify, and that, because if, as far as I'm concerned, we passed the vote, and I'm okay with it. I think it's a fair thing. It has nothing to do with anybody personal. It was, my whole point all along was that executive officer is neutral across the board. And even though we all love each other very, very much, as all of these board members, I mean it from the bottom of my heart, but that doesn't work like that all the time. I've been part of it in, previous jobs and boards and things like that. So if the president doesn't get along with somebody, that could be a problem. It could be an issue. So that's why, to me, this was a very fair and neutral decision. That's why we went there so many times, because it's just equal across the board and it's neutral. So there's no, oh, I like this person more than this one or whatever, because executive officer is just one, and she has to, or she has to treat everybody the same way.
Well, the only thing I'd say is that, you know, this has been an issue that's come up a couple times. And of course, I'm the person who thought you had a quorum, but because I wasn't there, you didn't have a quorum and I had technical issues. But I did have a chance before, and I would have talked about it on the call as I reviewed some of my very first expense approval report stubs. And at the bottom of that stub, it had D. Miller as my approver. So though maybe she didn't know it, maybe it was like informally talking about, did we have meetings this day? Did we have these, you know, were these people there that day? Maybe she didn't sign off officially, but it shows on my stub. I've got those stubs at home. I've had them in my stub forever. So it seems like we were doing what was consistent, what DCA was looking to do way back. And then we made some modifications, and then it just got a little convoluted of what, you know, what that was going to be. So, I mean, look, I don't really care which way it goes. I think it's good to have somebody from the board's eyes on it. I think that's what the, you know, the elected officials, we're the elected ones sort of, or appointed ones. There's got to be some check and balance that they want us there for as well. Otherwise they could do bureaus and not need a board. So
Would
you know,
the
that would be
same,
my thought. Huh?
Beata, would the same thing be met if we put in the wording two-step verification, or board president signs and executive officer, which is really probably what they've been doing all along, and now we're just making our forms and our policies line up with what perhaps we've been doing? Because according to Jeff, saved that for me and send me a copy so I can see my
Yeah.
activities that I have no idea I had.
And to
Yeah.
Jeff, to your point is, first of all, yes, that's when you had issues with your bike or whatever, but it was clarified, even though you weren't there, we still had the quorum. Just to clarify, it's, you know, it did pass. But the other thing is, what you just said.
Well, I don't know what the rules, because you know, I've never heard the rules that were raised, but you know, I'm not an attorney. Even though I might have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express yesterday, sorry to be sarcastic, but you know, I always thought,
I mean, Heather just said,
one over 50% has always been, in my opinion, majority, but maybe there are very specific laws that deal with these kind of things that require a bigger number. So if they did, they did. But I would have at the time said, yes, we should have the president. I would have probably created a tie at that point, it sounds like, from what I've heard, because I felt that that's important, that the board president is elected to that position to kind of represent the work of the board, and that board president is the interface between the executive officer and staff on all things related to whether we get our hotels booked for us, our cars booked for us, our mileage reimbursed, our meals reimbursed. I thought they were our advocate, you know, with the administrative piece of the board. That's what I've always thought. But and I always, under my guidelines, I always thought that was kind of what we did. I thought that was what it was, but it was kind of a surprise to me where there was some like questions on whether that person should or shouldn't have to do it. Now I see my power spinning. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I think it's important that we have one of us, whether it's, you know, whether we call it the recorder or the treasurer or the president. I don't really care who it is, the board, who's making the decision, but having somebody from our side of the table coordinate with somebody from the administrative side of the table seems like it's a good thing for public policy. Just does.
Okay, so I just have my 2 cents, because you keep saying to have an eye there or coordinate. That's very different from that, or being like that the person has to approve all of our things. So if somebody just has to oversee or whatever, that's very different versus like I feel, oh, I have to go to my boss to approve my, you know, stay or whatever it is. So that's
right.
maybe also the difference.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's maybe true. We don't, you know, we're not writing people up or anything like that. That's not our role. That's right. But I do think it's important that we have somebody from our side that is, you know, either acknowledging that appears to be correct, or, you know, or reminds them maybe, hey, you know what? Yeah, we got these packets, but you know, we ended up getting this other packet the other day that was part of it or whatever, that reminds them that maybe there was more time spent in preparation than what was thought out, right? Or that there might have been a call or two separate prepping for the meeting with staff that would have had board work. So,
So then I have another question, since this could be an option since some boards are doing it, because right now we didn't have as many cases, but I remember when I joined, we had so many cases and it took hours and hours and hours of preparation time. So are we taking it off the table altogether?
This is legal, if I may.
Helen, one moment. Let me answer Beata's question real quick, please. Helen, Beata, this is Heather. That is one of the reasons that there was an amendment made to the manual in February 19 to change the policy from no, you cannot earn per diem for time spent preparing. It was changed in February of 19, or proposed in October of 18 and adopted in February 19. That was directly in response to what you're saying, which is there was so much meeting materials, time spent on reviewing enforcement cases. That is what prompted the change, because before that change was made in October of 18, there was no earning for that. So the manual was updated so that it recognized the time you spent on that. Does that help when you say you used to spend a lot of time and then the policy was changed so that you could earn the per diem for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. You are correct. There used to be more materials that were sent out due to the volume and the fact that the manual said you cannot earn per diem for time spent preparing. That's what prompted the change to the manual to say, yes, you can earn per diem for time spent preparing for the meetings.
Okay, so as of now, you can do that, and even though it's not really per diem, because it would have to be several meetings in order for it to add up to some, just one day, right?
Well, I hate to add further wrinkles to this, but that could be something that could be added in, because you're right. Because I just want to remind everyone, when there is a board meeting, board staff fills out, because board members are actually considered state employees. Board staff fills out what is basically a timesheet for the board members to earn per diem for the board meetings. When there's like an hour and a half committee meeting, for example, then we will cobble together the time to meet the 6 hour minimum specified in the policy for earning the per diem for the committee meetings. Now also with this, earning per diem for time spent, the board could either decide to add a certain number that board members, could get, like you can earn this much for time spent, or to your point, be able to do what you said, which is use the form to add it up and then turn it in when you meet the 6 hour threshold. So like I said, I hate to complicate it, but you do have a couple of options in recognition of what you just pointed out.
I just want to be clear. At this point, I'm okay going like either way, because we talk about it so much, and yet it's still, there's still a little gray area. That's why before we make any further motions, I want to make sure it's all clear. I'm sorry, Helen, you wanted to say something.
Yes, so I did want to clarify 2 points. So the issue is that in May, the board made a not fully formed decision. So we are bringing forth the information again to revote with all the information the board should have had in May. And then the addition, and in addition, since May, DCA has put out best practices in that there should be a 2-layer approval process, and that the employee, Heather, shouldn't necessarily approve her boss's paperwork. But the board should then make a new motion, a new decision on how they would like to proceed with all the information available, as well as information from DCA as to best practices. Concerning the motion that was made, it was a motion taken and a motion that passed. And then later on, there was a discussion about whether or not the motion passed. And at the time, we thought it hadn't. The default for all of boards and DCA is you must have a quorum to conduct business, and then a majority of the parties present passes the motion. But each practice act, each board can have something more specific in their act. And so at the time I was informed that BOT had something more specific. That's what we went to. And then after the meeting, we discovered that BOT actually does not have anything different or specifying that they fall within the standards within the manual. And so in that BOT is silent, it defaults to the standard, which is a majority of the quorum that's present.
And Helen, just to be clear, so if there are no further motions, like to change anything, then it defaults to what the decision was in our May meeting, correct?
It would be preferred to retake the motion simply because the original motion was not based upon all the information that the board should have had with it when it made that decision.
Okay, so if it's either the same motion that was laid out last time or a new motion, because now we have all the documents and updated materials and can make a choice on alignment and those kinds of things. Okay, all right,
Correct.
that helps you. Thank you. Beata, does that help?
No,
It does help,
makes
and
it worse for
I'm
me.
totally fine with the two-step verification process. But I would be more comfortable if it says, like, either the president or another board member, whoever the board decides to go with, that oversees versus approves. So that would not make me feel like, oh, I need the verification or approval from my, boss or whatever. So it would be that oversee, or how could that be put together? So one, Heaven signs it and then the president oversees it. Would that be something that would work?
Can I say something, because I've been waiting to talk
Please.
and no one's, and I haven't been allowed. No one's called on me. So
Richard, sorry, I didn't see the hand because I thought we were using the video feature. My apologies.
well, I have that too. Anyway, so speaking of transparency, I was struck by two things, because there are issues that we've talked about, and one of them is on the very last page of the psychology of the pharmacy board one language. They don't seem to say the president approves of the timesheets. It seems to be that they just fill out, they talk about a board member attendance report. It doesn't say who approves that. But on the second page, it says, at each quarterly meeting of the board, there shall be a report of all per diem reimbursement and travel expenses claimed by each member of the board for the fiscal year. And so I circled that and I said transparent. So every quarterly meeting may be a lot, but they do have the whole board looking at a list of all the board members and all the travel expenses here, which it's like interesting. Why is that there? Well, maybe there was an issue on that board, but it is a transparency measure. If you are having the executive officer or the and president doing whatever or president, and you didn't have the two-step verification, you would have some transparency when you have a public meeting and there's a list prepared of all the board members and all the travel they did, which seems like an interesting thing to do. Okay, whether we want to do it or not is something. But it struck me. Another thing that struck me in the BVNPT Administrative Procedures Manual, which is, I was struck by the level of detail and clarity in their manual. But they talk about the reasonable amount of time for activities, because we talked about maybe assigning a value to reading a stipulated settlement or reading a case, and we couldn't figure how to do that because there are so many different potential variations in that, and we just never settled on anything. They have on page 11 of the BVNPT Administrative Procedures Manual, they say they have the president approving it, and it says the president may use other members' hours or his or her own time to perform the same or similarly related task to determine a reasonable amount of time. So how the amount of time charged for an activity is supposed to be a reasonable amount of time, and they define the reasonable amount of time based on the president's time or other members' hours, to sort of make everybody to I guess to get everybody's hours consistent. That's not necessarily anyway. So I just thought that was interesting because it is a topic that we talked about. Does anybody think adding those things would be also good if we're going to make a motion regarding our policy?
And just my points, just really quick. I'm sorry, Beata. I'm just knowing what's before us fiscally. I think I go back to my original point. I'm not, this is just me. I'm not comfortable getting paid for per diem, knowing that we're going to be increasing fees and there's a whole nother fiscal component of this, but I understand why everybody, or there are thoughts for it. So I totally get that. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. And I still honestly have a problem that, you know, we are signing Heather Martin's checks, and to have her sign off on ours just doesn't make sense in my head. But those are the two big sticking points for me, but I just wanted to throw that out there and continue the conversation. Beata?
No, of course, like everybody thinks about that. It's not, and I think what we were talking about really, it was, stipulated settlement being 15, 20 minutes. It's not that we're trying, nothing like that. It's when we have those, and this is why we've been talking about it back and forth, because it is really difficult, because sometimes I receive a pack and we have 5 cases and it's about 600 pages. And sure, at this point we know how to read it and whatnot, but it still has a lot of information. So that can't, it's not about, I mean, I also value my time, and whatever this per diem is really nothing. It's not covering, much. It's not, but at least you feel, you're not spending hours reading this much material. So that's why if we could somehow come up with the criteria, okay, if approximate time for this or that, again, nobody's talking about like, oh, we have a quick vote on some stipulated settlement or whatever. We're talking about when we fully have just a lot of cases. And that has a lot of, some have like, a few pages because it's black and white, very clear, easy going. And sometimes they have, from different certificates to, so many different documents. It's just, I'm just saying, we also value time. Nobody can say that we're being overpaid here. We're not doing it for that matter. So I either way, I'm okay. I'm definitely okay, comfortable with executive officers signing off. So however the board wants to go from here.
I'm wondering if I can address some of, maybe can I make a motion?
You
Yes,
can't.
I can't. Okay. I was wondering if anybody.
I was just reading Robert's rules last night. I know we've let that happen before, but actually the board president can't make a motion. Can I just comment back to Richard asked a question about some of the pharmacy language. And if we are going to move forward on some action here, could we at least go back to that real tactical piece of addressing some of that as we move forward on what we want to do with our language? Because there is some good language in some of these other board materials.
Board Member Miller, can I just posit this? Because I know this one might be a little meaty. Does anyone want to make a motion on the 2 easier ones in terms of including the board member attendance log in the manual, or adding the footnotes for the May meeting for public members? Those were 2 before us as asks. I don't know if anybody feels comfortable making a motion on those before we get to the meat of what you are asking. No?
Well, if you're, since I'm not muted, I'll just tell you where I'm at. I would almost rather do the policy first and then the form, because I think the form also involves, there's other examples of forms that have been given that could actually be pretty good.
Okay.
That's the only reason I'm asking for that order. No other reason than that.
How about the footnotes? The footnotes, including the footnotes to the May meeting. Is there any motion for that?
Why would we? What was the rationale for that?
That because we had new information, old information, and the public was trying to figure out like why is this all jumbled? that there was some clarity in the footnotes of the May meeting so that people who would see this in hindsight are able to follow along, was my understanding.
This is legal, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So the minutes of the meeting would accurately reflect that the motion was taken, motion passed, and also accurately reflect the discussion at the end that stated that perhaps there was a problem and the motion did not pass. And so the footnote should say something along the lines of after the meeting, because it cannot be included as part of the minutes since that's not when it happened. It was determined that the motion did in fact pass.
Thank you for the clarification, Helen.
This is Heather. I don't disagree with Helen. But what I would just suggest is that maybe we separate those issues, because really truly the any edits to the form, which right now only talks about removing the start and end time. Any edits to the form is separate, which is separate also from the policy of what you want changed in the board administrative manual, which is separate for the minutes. And I really, although they are tied together by a topic, they are all distinctly different. And I would just like to, maybe address the form, because then you can address the approval process and either keep the manual the way it is, which is removing the president, or you can update the manual. I mean, you have so many choices, but I just really, I feel like we need to keep them separate, please, and maybe just target them, one at a time, please.
And this is legal. I apologize if my clarification was misstated. I was only reflecting clarification specifically on the footnote.
Yeah, that's how I understood it too, Helen. I didn't think we were trying to jumble or put anything together, Heather. I was trying to do everything separate, and so that was one of the asks. So I was just trying to bring that up. Maybe I misunderstood you. But if we don't want to talk about the footnotes, we can go with Denise's thoughts, and she brought it up. And she was carrying over Richard's thoughts on.
I was going to ask for Denise's thoughts on the forms, because I was interested in the same. I'd like to hear what Denise was thinking that would be good for our form from the other forms.
This is Heather. I apologize. What we're really trying to do is support the board, and that means putting up the materials that are being talked about. And so we went to the pharmacy board information because you were talking about when Richard pointed that out, and Sharon, you posited the question, does anyone else want to talk about this? So we put that there. So we can go back to the form, and that's fine. If I would just ask though, if as you move around, if you give staff a chance, please, to get to that so that everyone's on the same page. Pretty please. Thank you.
Yeah, and it just seems to me we already had one vote. We voted to remove the start and end time, so we kind of we got the ball rolling on the form, then we got off on another topic. So maybe if we go back to the form, we can finish one thing.
And just to answer your question that was posed to me, Richard, I stand corrected. It's the form by the respiratory care board, not the pharmacy. And where my thought was going with that is, once we got through the decision on policy and we're looking at a certain form, is this just a form we could adopt? That was the question.
It would be nice if we could see them side by side with ours. But it includes more than ours though. Yeah.
This is Heather. Is this where you'd like to be on the materials, or did you want to see page 2?
I was just making a comment. I didn't intend to direct I was making a comment about my thoughts. It would be the will of the direction the board president wants us to talk on next. So I was done with my comment.
Thank you.
So where are we? Where do we want to go next, everybody? It was, I think Richard and Denise wanted to go back to the form and work in that order, the form, policy, or no, sorry, policy form. So we could direct staff to the correct document. Because Denise and Richard had, let's look up policy, then maybe we can amend the form. Which one are we at so they could throw the right one up?
Richard, did you want to weigh in, or do you want me to give my comments for what do you want to do?
I'm okay with either one. I mean, if you look at the respiratory form, there's a lot of, it does have the travel stuff you could put on it, which is that is kind of nice because we do have to report that I use a separate spreadsheet currently that has that information when we had in-person meetings that would be similar to what the travel expenses section of this form is. And then the per diem part on the lower part of this form is very similar to what we just did to amend it with our amended form.
Right.
So as long as the dollar amounts are current according to policy, that for the meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I would be very happy to switch to this, to take this form and steal it and borrow it and use it for the OT board.
Agreement. I like this form. This form is more encompassing, and it probably would serve our purposes better.
Does the staff have any objections or concerns about this form?
This is Heather. No, we do not. And what we could actually do even is probably shorten up the top for the travel and add a little bit more room down there on the per diem, because you might have time earned under per diem, more frequently than reimbursement for travel expenses.
Okay, well, there are two columns basically for the per diem.
Yes.
I move that we scratch our form and repurpose the format of this form with for our expense reporting.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second by Lena. Was that Lena?
Yes.
Okay. Any other board member comments or discussion before we open it up for public comment? No? Moderator, can we open it up for public comment, please?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, there appears to be no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. Secretary Marcos, there was a motion and a second. Can we take a vote on the motion before us? Thank you.
Yes, Richard Bookwalter,
Aye.
Lena Doe,
Aye.
Denise Miller,
Yes.
Jeff Farrow,
Aye.
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
Beata Marcos, aye.
Okay, that motion carries on the form. And what other direction do we want to go regarding?
May I request that we go back to that page from February 19th that has the yellow and the green? I'd like to make a motion that we restore the language here with the yellow text removed and the green text, highlighted text added to the current policy, and add the form that we just approved.
I'm sorry, Richard, could you repeat that one more time about the green and yellow?
I move that we restore the language from this document with the yellow highlighted language removed and the green highlighted language current is, in there, is restored, and add to that policy, and then add the form that we just voted on to the policy.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
so we have a motion and a second. Any board member comment?
I just have a question about that. My apologies, Richard. I don't actually understand that motion because we already voted this. It was just a technical thing that it wasn't carried forward to May 2020. So I think we've already voted and approved on the language of February 7th, 2019. And had we seen it in our most recent meeting, it wouldn't have had these highlights. Please, Heather, step in and tell me if I have this correct or not.
This is Heather. I was actually going to seek clarification that the motion was to undo the changes that were adopted. And so I was going to ask that and you started speaking. So I believe that is Richard's motion.
He wants to reverse it back to us not getting paid?
Correct.
I didn't get that.
That's why I said I started to ask for clarification, but then you started speaking. So
Sorry.
no. I mean, I was going to ask that and you just beat me to it. So perhaps.
No, I don't want to reverse it to not being paid. We're looking right now at revised February 7, 2019 language, where it says per diem salary shall be paid for time spent preparing for board and committee meetings. If you strike out the yellow highlighted text, this reads: board members shall be paid for per diem salary for attendance at board and committee meetings of which they are members. Per diem salary shall be paid for board or committee for time spent preparing for board and committee meetings. That's if you remove all the yellow text in this document, the yellow highlighted text, and keep the green, which is what we did on February 7th, 2019.
I understand that. What I don't understand is I thought we already voted on it. That's really what my question is.
No, we voted on it in February 7th, 2019, but then we voted to change it in May. And so I'm just trying to change it to February 2019.
This is Heather, if I may. The vote in May of 2021 was not about the strike through and addition of the language voted on in February of 19. The May 2021 vote was only about replacing board president with executive officer.
I understand that. I'm wanting to restore this language, which was the prior state of.
But this is in effect right now, with the exception of the board president and executive officer language.
Yes, that's what I mean. You want to word it that way instead?
No.
I'm just doing it a different way. We have the language in front of us.
We have the language in front of us for per diem, right, Heather? Do we have the language that was voted? Do you understand what I'm asking? This is just.
So there are other sections. There are missing sections, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and so.
Okay.
So for me, I mean, I get what you're saying, Richard, and we can certainly move forward.
Okay, yeah,
and you can
you're
make
right.
your
If there's missing sections, you're right. I was thinking this was complete, but it's not. Okay.
Right. So for me, I just wanted my understanding is we voted on this. It's just a technicality that the strike through is still there and didn't come forward in May. But the language we saw in May, the discussion was around removal of board president. So I think if you're moving to that, it makes more sense for them to bring up, to bring up the May 2021 meetings? I don't know, Heather, please help.
The May 2021 text was incorrect, is what I'm hearing. So this seemed to be more current.
No, it's not incorrect.
It's the May 20th. Is this the May 20th language?
No, this is Heather. I hear what you're both saying. The language in the yellow and the green is what is the most recent language in the manual voted on in February of 2019. Since then, because the vote did not in May did not have the information about board members being able to earn per diem for board prep time. That's one of the reasons we talked about the motion, but as well as footnoting this. And this language, because it's from February of 19, does not reflect the vote from May of 2021. What I would like to do, what I believe Richard is saying is using this language. I'm still not clear about the motion though from May of 2021. If somebody could just make that clear, what I would like to do is just ask that the board president take a break and give staff a chance to put something together to see if we are all on the same page and the board members are clear on what they're voting on. How do you feel about that thought?
I think it's probably time for a break, Heather, like a 15-minute break.
I like it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, let's take 15 minutes. It's 3:16. We'll come back at 3:31.
Sharon, sorry. I just need to figure out, are we going to another agenda item or after we vote? I just want to kind of approximately know because I need to go and pick up Mila from school. But I mean, I have time. It's not until like 4:45. I just need to plan it out.
Yeah, and maybe before we go really quickly, is it the pleasure of the board to continue to finish off agenda item 18 and then come back tomorrow with 19, 20, 21? Or is our purpose to come back and finish all of it? Can I just take a poll so that we could help other board members plan too?
I am open to either or. So as long as I'm done by, let's say, 4:40, no later than 4:45 today.
Okay, Denise?
I'm okay with going as long as we can till 4:45
Okay.
or 5 or whatever Beata suggested.
Lynn, Jeff, and Richard, are you okay with that?
Agreed. I'm fine with either one.
Okay. All right, so
Lena, what was that?
I'm fine either way. If we go into.
Yeah, me too.
okay, so let's take 15 minutes. Let's come back at 3:32 and then we'll power on until we can't anymore. I'll see you guys in 15 minutes. Thank you, moderator. Okay, it's 3:32. The board is back in session, but before we do that, as always, we will take a quorum roll call just to make sure we have a quorum. Excuse me. Secretary Marcos, do you mind taking a roll call?
No, of course. Richard Bookwalter.
Here.
Lena Doe. Lena, we can't hear you. You're not unmuted. Lena? Okay, we'll get back to her. Denise Miller.
Here.
Jeff Farrow. Jeff, are you here? Your mic is also not unmuted. Okay. Sharon Pavlovich.
Present.
Beata Marcos here. So we go back to Lena Doe. Are you here? Jeff, are you here? So it seems like Jeff and Lena either can't hear us or we can't hear them. But we do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. Just let me ask, moderator or board staff, have you heard of anybody having any tech issues?
Hi, this is Heather. I do not have any text from either one of them.
Okay, we'll move on because we still have some stuff to talk to, and I'll just say one more time. We were still on roll call. Is Lena or Jeff here yet?
Maybe they could raise their hand if they're having audio problems. Oh,
Lena Dode raised her hand.
I'm
Lena,
here.
you're here, Lena? Okay,
Yeah.
Lena's
Oh,
here.
great. Okay, Lena is present.
And Jeff, if you're having problems, raise your hand. If not, maybe we just haven't heard from you yet. Okay, we'll check in. Yeah, thank you, Piotr. We have a quorum, so we'll continue on with the discussion point on agenda item 18. Heather, did you want to share something for the board to look over?
yes, please. Just one moment here.
Okay. Jeff, was that you?
Yeah. I said,
Okay,
sorry, I was
Jeff's-
on mute.
Okay. Beata, Jeff was here. He just checked in at 3:35.
Yes, copy that.
Thank you.
I've been sitting here. It's just I was listening and I was on mute. So I'm like, sorry.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so what we have here is the document that was included in the meeting materials, except instead of showing addition and strikeout, I actually did the addition and strikeout. So if you look at your materials and you can read in paragraph 1, the first sentence ends with which they are members, period, and then begins. One moment, please. Just do.
Heather, just checking. We went radio silent. We're just kind of lost it for a second. Is that what it is? I see her hand up, so maybe that means tech issues. We'll just hold on for a second till we hear from her.
Yes, hang on, please, just bear with me. I'm sorry, when my deleting, I went far. Let me just paste real quick. Just give me 40 seconds, just a moment. So my apologies for that. This document is the document that I took and I deleted the yellow, except for this one. I deleted the yellow for items that should be deleted and added in the green. So now it does read, per diem shall be paid for time spent preparing for board or committee meetings. How come I can't follow this? Hold on just 1 second. Spent preparing for board or committee meetings, including reading. Okay, so I deleted the yellow and I took the highlight off the green. Okay, so I did that throughout number 1 and 2. Down here in number 2, you could see if you went to line 3, it said something about approved in advance, for example, and that's gone, right? And then also on the next page in item 3, the last sentence, it now ends with attendance form, but it removes the part about time spent accumulated. I'm sorry, that's up here a little bit. I don't know, this is a very weird text box. So it ends right here, attendance form. In your materials, after that, it said per diem, includes, and that part has been stricken. So this document here is actually what was voted on in February, without the strike changes. So I copied and pasted that one into this one, which is the same document, but I did a find and replace to remove the, to replace board president with executive officer consistent with the vote. So insofar as I was a little bit confused. My apologies, Richard. I was just confused because when you said restore, that's what threw me off, because the main motion about board president, executive officer had nothing to do with any of those changes. So I was not clear on that. So my apologies. So what you have before you now is a document that was, one, voted on with the additions and deletions in February of 19, as well as the replacement of board president with executive officers consistent with the main motion that passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Seeing this before us, what are the thoughts of the board?
I already told you my thoughts, so I'm just going to remain silent.
So Richard, so I'm sorry, this is Heather. I wasn't clear on your motion. So could you, I had thought that this document would reflect what you want, what you were making the motion to be.
My motion was to restore the February 19th text. And you've changed, if you've taken president out and put executive director in, or executive officer in, that is not what my motion. So go ahead and.
So I'm sorry. So when you say restore the text, you mean with all the language that was removed, you want back in, and the new language in green you want taken out.
You told me that you wanted to restore, that you did a search and replace and put executive officer where it said board president. That's what I heard you say.
So if I'm hearing what you're asking, Richard, is you want all of the yellow from this document that we're looking at removed and the green language to remain, and those are the only changes you were proposing in your motion. Is that correct?
Correct. So for example, in section 2 here.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
In section 2, in section 2 of the yellow and green document, it says board members shall be paid per diem salary, blah, blah, blah. Approved in advance by the board president. The in advance is gone, and the board president shall be approved by the board president. The one you did, my understanding, you replaced board president with executive officer.
Let's see, just 1 second. Here. So here in number 2, at the bottom line 3, that are approved in advance is removed, and it says by the board president.
Oh, but you said you did a search and replace board president with
I
executive
gave you
officer.
two versions, right? And my apologies, I gave you two versions. One, because I wasn't clear when you said restore, the language in February never went away. That's still been there, and that's why I'm my apologies. That's why I said I didn't understand it. This language right here, in advance, is removed.
So
Up here, it talks about the green part, and it says,
okay, let me just read it. Maybe I'll should just read it and not go by what you said, because I'm not clear on why there's a misunderstanding. But anyway, I can't see it now. There we go.
Heather, if I understand this, what you've done is you've presented us with two options. The motion could be to approve this one or to approve this one. And one document is February with all the documents that were approved in February. And then your second document includes what was approved in May. So what's before us as a board is we can decide on this or that, and maybe even add a little language to what we'd like the final version to be. Is that accurate?
that.
Is
Yes, I'm going to do this
yes.
real time. I'm going to do this real time to what I believe Richard was asking for. Right. So, oops, hold on. I got a black box in the way. Okay, so I'm doing this again. Oh. So this is the language that was approved in February, and it does not yet reflect the replacement of board president with executive officer as was voted on in May.
Okay, so that is what my motion was to do just what you just did. It was this language.
Okay, so if I can kind of just tie this back to May, the motion was to replace board president with executive officer, and your motion is to replace executive officer with board president.
Yes, to restore this language as the current language.
I thought we would also add the executive officer and then, or keep the executive officer, then add the president as well. It's not either or, it's both, right?
That would be an amendment to the motion if mine is seconded. Or I could withdraw my motion and you could make that one.
I just thought that that's what we were talking about, that we would have a two-step process. And it would keep the executive officer and the president.
Okay, so no one has seconded my motion, so maybe you would want to make that motion.
Did we, just want to clarify with everybody, did we not have a second on Richard's motion?
I'm happy to second that motion. I thought we were still talking through all the different unique pieces of it, and that we were clarifying that it was correct to his motion. Is it correct to your motion, Richard?
This is correct to my motion.
But Lena did second that suggestion. I just and I just want to display that. So there was a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Beata, you could make a motion to amend that adds executive officer a couple of places.
Well, I would prefer not, because initially I didn't want the president to be on there in the first place. So that would not be what I would put the motion forward to be in the,
Oh, okay, so, well, then we could vote this down or vote this up or whatever, and then go on to the next thing.
It
So
was my
just to-
understanding that your issue was that the word authorized was the one that you were concerned with, but if you said reviewed, you were comfortable with that.
Yeah, but in this motion, we are removing the executive officer and replacing the executive officer with the president. And I thought we all agreed on a two-step process that we're keeping the executive officer and restoring the president to be part of it, as well. So this,
Your amendment would be and board president, Beata. But I think what Richard's trying to, his suggestion to amend works, but instead of it being and executive officer, your amendment is that the words would be or the words would be and board president, not just board president. Get it?
Yeah.
So that
I mean, this is collaboration, an attempt to collaborate to get a document that works for everybody. We've been going at this a while, and this would be great if we could get everybody's input into this one document that's already a pretty decent framework. It is a pretty decent framework. And so, I could support, I'm not the second on here, but if I had been the second, I would have supported adding back in executive officer and making sure that there's clarification that there's a two-party kind of approval process.
Okay, so if it's okay with you guys, can
I'm okay
we,
with that too.
let's, okay, should we just take a vote of the way on?
Or, well, if you want, I'm happy to withdraw the motion so that we can craft a better motion.
Okay, Richard, do you want to go ahead and do that?
If Lena, my second, is willing to do that.
Okay, Richard, go ahead and,
I'll withdraw my motion. Let's go back.
okay.
And did Lena agree with that?
Lynn, are you okay with that? If you're saying something, Lena, you're probably on mute. Okay, hopefully, Lena, when you get back to us, or you could let us. Lena?
She's not showing up in my, oh, there she is. She came back.
Just checking in, Lynn, are you okay with it? Richard withdrew his motion, and you were the second. Is it okay to withdraw?
Her mic is off.
Yeah,
Maybe she could raise her hand if she's having audio issues, she could raise her hand to agree if she agrees with the withdrawal of the motion.
Lynn,
Oh,
What's
this
that?
is the moderator. I sent a request for her to unmute her microphone if she's having issues with the microphone at all. Hopefully that helps.
legal, while we're waiting for Lena, just to verify, we cannot withdraw a motion unless the first and second agree, correct? Helen?
Come on, Lena.
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
My question was, Richard withdrew the motion and Lena is the second. Do we have to have both in agreement to withdraw the motion?
I'm not certain, but I believe if the motion has been withdrawn, the second becomes moot because there is nothing to be seconded.
Okay, so we will take that stance that Richard withdrew his motion, and then we'll go forward. Thank you, Richard. So how do you guys want to prepare this doc?
well, Richard's motion was good as long as he includes to keep the executive officer there, right? That's what we agreed on.
I think he's asking for your feedback too, Beata. How do you want it to say executive officer and board, or you had mentioned language too, like, two-step or?
It would be like two-step process, which includes the board president or whoever else we want to have, and the executive officer. Denise, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the word was two-step verification.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Two-step approval. Because really, that's actually, just so you know, what we're putting into this language is actually how they do it anyhow. if we go back to what what Heather identified earlier, board staff compiles it and then the board would in fact send it to the board staff. The board staff would put it all together in a packet, send it on to board president for approval and signature.
Does anyone want to make a motion for the new language? Do you think Heather's typing it in?
Apologies. Again, this was just sort of a way to try to capture something. I'm sorry, these text boxes aren't so forgiving. And again, this is just to get a talking point for folks to make a motion. And I certainly don't care one way about the language. It's just a starting point, perhaps.
There's a B. Per diem salary shall be submitted. There's a B missing at the first. Thanks. Do we need anything in the previous page?
Beata, does that capture in that by adding it where Heather put that? Does that satisfy the desire to put it back in rather than in paragraph 2 and paragraph 3?
Yeah, this will work.
Okay. Works for me too.
So is it just in that one place or is it every place where there's board president? Because the original motion was to replace board president with EO. And so the question remains, wouldn't it be
This is Heather. And so to clarify, I highlighted in yellow the portion talking about the board president. So my question would be, would this say the board president, comma, or executive officer or designee, or would it say the board president and executive officer?
I think it's I think is what it was gonna. I think that's the gist of what I picked up is that there's an interest in having the board president and the executive officer working closely on anything related to expenses per diem. One, it protects both the board and the board members, and it protects the executive officer by ensuring that there are two different sets of eyes on all expenditures that are approved. Is that consistent? Is that what everybody else feels? That's the gist I've got.
I agree with that, Jeff.
Me too.
Denise.
Yeah. So this will satisfy everybody on the board.
Well, and also I think it provides all of us some protections against disgruntled licensee who's worried about fees going up, some consumer who feels that, these are, just not serious business because we have two, distinct persons who have had an opportunity to verify that this is work that's under the rule is compensatable. So,
And just,
Can we add one more thing?
oh gosh,
Which is-
sure.
Which is that at one meeting a year of the board, there shall be a report of all per diem reimbursement and travel expenses claimed by each member of the board for the fiscal year. Consistent, not the pharmacy board has it every quarter, but that seems excessive. But we could do it maybe once a year.
Do we have any idea how much that they're claiming in per diem and whether that, because that number is so large that they feel necessary to have to call it out? Or do you think it's purely just a transparency issue? I just don't know if we're going to create additional work when we're already trying to justify. I mean, if the amounts that we're claiming are de minimis kind of in the scheme of things, is it going to cost us more to produce the report than, whatever we might protect from the consumer? I'm not trying to justify not being transparent. I'm just trying to see if ours are so low, but it costs us twice as much to do the report, then we're not being good, stewards of the cash. But
and in a way, we are already the executive officer's report does report travel expenses in the aggregate during public meetings, right?
Right.
and just to Beata's point, she said, I just wanted to clarify, Beata, I think you said, is everyone on board? My stand hasn't changed only because I believe in the two-step process wholeheartedly. I just don't believe that we should be getting paid for board prep material, so I can't support it, just so that's clear.
The only thing that I would just say to you, Sharon, if you don't mind me just weighing in, while respectfully that's your point of view, that motion passed. So what you're voting on today is not, you wouldn't have to vote no for this motion to pass. Do you understand? Because that already passed. That passed in February 2019. What's before us today is this language. So unless you were hoping to raise a motion to have us revisit that again, it's really not before us today.
Is that correct? I'm just going to verify, Denise, if that's correct. Is that correct, Helen?
Yes.
That was a yes. Thank you, Denise.
But to Richard's point about, and Jeff's point, if you're looking for a weigh-in on the reporting, not a bad idea. It could be, I would leave that, I don't know if that has to be added to this policy or if that's just something we direct in a separate motion to add to the executive officer's report or how we want to go about that. But it's not a bad idea to report out on stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it does sound if we are reporting it in the aggregate, the data is already there and it could be just the way it's formatted in the report and called out. It's like, here's our total cost and here are how they were paid out.
Maybe staff, Heather, would that be too much of an extra thing for the staff to do?
No, it would not.
Once a year?
And I guess if you all, could determine you want this, quarterly, do you want this, at the summer meeting after the close of the fiscal year? I mean, we just need a little bit more direction on that, but it's not problematic.
And could the president simply request that rather than, or this board could simply request that at a later date and not put it in the policy manual?
The information before you, I'm sorry, this is Heather. The information before you from the pharmacy board is actually in their administrative manual. Just want to point that out.
Okay.
I could go either way on that. So I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting. So.
Yeah, I'm fine with it either way as well. But
Does
So
our
there-
EO have any preference? Any opinion on this? Which way to
so, I
report?
mean, I guess what we would need is a motion and then find a second for the motion in the format you want it. Do you want it in the book, policy manual? Do you want it separate? And
Got it.
if you want it, how often?
So make that motion.
And this is Heather. I mean, if you want this as a standing, item, I think it's not a bad idea to have it in the manual. Then it doesn't matter who's the EO or who's the board president or who the board members are, right? I mean, you have this framework that ensures consistency.
Yep.
I like that.
So I'll make the motion. I make a motion that we include in the policy manual that there is let's just do annual, short after the end of the fiscal year, an audit of all, is it per diem that we want or expenses in general that we want claimed by each member of the board each fiscal year? So I'm going to say that it's going to be, I can't read the text we have above because so at the end of the fiscal year, the executive officer shall provide a report of all per diem reimbursed and travel expenses claimed by each member of the board for the fiscal year.
I second.
Hang on one second. I'm sorry. I was copying and pasting from pharmacy, so I missed it. So,
Can you just take the language from pharmacy though and just change it to quarterly? I think that's what, Jeff, isn't that all you wanted?
I just did it annually because I know pharmacy, we have 2 members of my union that sit on the board of pharmacy. And I know that they meet weekly doing cases. So I know that the amount of money that they are being reimbursed for their duties are significantly more than we are. So, I don't know that we need a monthly report or a quarterly report. I think at the end of the fiscal year should be sufficient. If it looks like there's some flag in there, we'll definitely be able to catch it before it gets, a second year. But I think the goal is to make sure it's transparent to the consumer, to make sure that all board members are, not abusing their office. Not that I see that being a possibility based upon the way the work is done, but transparency is a great thing. It drives consumer and licensee support. So I'm fine with it, but I just think at the end of the,
You'll want to take out quarterly.
Yeah.
That would be annual, at the annual.
at the meeting, the meeting immediately following the end of the fiscal year.
So do we have a motion or not?
That was my motion.
I second.
Okay, so there was a motion and a second. Any board discussion? Nope. Moderator, could we open it up for public comment if there are any?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests.
It doesn't look like there's anybody in the, oh, maybe there is.
This is the
Everybody-
moderator. I only have Carrie Holmes in as our attendee. am not sure if I still have to ask for public comment, but I will just in case because I don't I don't want to cross any lines. But it
Makes
doesn't
sense.
appear are any
I was looking
requests
at
for.
the
Yes,
I was looking at
please,
the
let's please,
attendees.
Steph. It appears there
Just
are
for the
no
record.
requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please, moderator. Thank you.
All right.
Secretary Marcos, could we take a vote on the motion before us about this? And Jeff, just so I understand correctly, the motion, the only one that you sent forward has to do with the yearly report, correct?
Has to do with the report of activities following the end of the fiscal, first board meeting following the end of the fiscal year,
Okay,
which is usually sometime after July 1.
okay. Secretary Marcos, when you're ready.
Richard Bookwalter,
Aye.
Lena Doe, she's not even part of this for the last long time. Denise Miller,
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Yes,
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
and Beata Marcos, yes.
And just let the minutes know, I'm not really sure when Lina Doe fell off, but I guess it was noted during our roll call at 4:09.
This is Heather, and just to clarify, I believe the last motion was specific to this other language, or unless I missed the part, it's all these other changes shown because Richard had withdrawn his last motion.
Yeah, I move that we accept the language, adopt the language as shown in this document as,
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you.
and allow you, the executive officer to make non-substantive changes.
So do we have a motion on the floor? Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Denise is second.
Go.
Any more discussion? Moderator, we do have to open it up just because Carrie is here.
All right.
Deputy Director Carrie Holmes.
This is the
Can
moderator.
I, before we take the vote, or are we going to have a problem because Lena's dropped? She's in the same kind of situation was when I was having technical difficulties the last time.
I think now we're agreeing on things.
Okay,
We have a quorum. We can vote.
Yeah.
okay.
Public comment, moderator?
All right. This is the moderator. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon down located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please, moderator. Secretary Marcos, do you mind taking the vote on the motion before us regarding acceptance of the language, the amended language by EO?
Richard Bookwalter,
Yes.
Lena Doe, still not here. Denise Miller,
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Yes,
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
and Beata Marcos, yes.
Okay, motion carries. I know that does not complete the document still. We haven't talked about the form, nor have we talked about the footnotes. Am I correct, Heather?
We voted on the form.
But to include it in the manual, did we vote on that? We did?
Oh, I'll move to include the new form in the manual.
It was included
Uh,
already.
Information fixed so that it reflects our board and not the other board.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to keep following protocol. So no board discussion. If not, moderator, we could just leave that open and ask if anybody wants to chime in.
While you're looking at public comment, could we have staff verify that the other motion on the form didn't already address that? Because I feel like this is the same motion.
Is it?
It did address that. We decided to include the new version of the form. It was part of the second motion we did.
Okay, I thought we were making amendments or looking at the form because I thought it was more than just taking start and, oh, I'm sorry, we amended it for the pharmacological board,
Yeah.
correct?
And we included that to be as part of the manual.
Okay, I'm sorry. So is that can someone verify we took the vote on the form to take, is that a yes?
This is Heather. I'm going to reach out to Jody and ask her to check her notes because in the motion that I have that Richard made and Beata seconded, it was remove the start and end times, and I did not have anything about including it in the manual. But
It was part of that motion. It was the motion after that.
I think it might have been a motion that I withdrew.
You withdrew that, and then we spoke about the adopting of the respiratory board form and including it in the manual was what I thought was a motion.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was a couple pages down. My apologies. Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
replace the current form with the respiratory
was
care form.
was
Moved by
afraid it was
Richard
the one
and
I
second by Lynna. All
Okay,
ayes. Motion pass.
Okay, so do you want to remove the motion, Richard?
Yeah, I'll withdraw the motion.
And the second, Denise, will you remove also?
No, I'm going to keep us on this for 20 minutes. No, I'm joking. Of course I'm going to remove it.
How
Okay.
about a motion to add
I'd
that?
like to discuss this for 20 more minutes.
How about a motion to add that footnote to the minutes?
Yes.
Clarifying.
That's the one we're missing, Richard. Anybody want to do that? The motion for adding the footnotes for the May meeting minutes?
And this is a question to Helen, if you don't mind, if I just ask this, because I find this footnote unnecessary, but I could be missing something on consumer aware. What I really want to understand is, does it cause more confusion than it seeks to clarify? And does the consumer, I just don't understand the purpose. I just don't really understand why it's necessary. And I'll certainly vote the will of the board, but if someone could just answer that.
Yes, this is legal. So the way the meeting occurred, it was confusing as to whether or not the motion passed, and the minutes generally reflect that it did not pass. That was kind of the last statement that was made in the minutes. And so the footnote would simply clarify that just in discussion towards the end of the meeting was not applicable. And so the motion did pass. And I believe Heather would like to also include a footnote that the information was not complete. I don't know that that's necessary for clarification because that would all be on today's minutes and that would be the first time the board was aware of that. But the board is aware of all the confusion that occurred in May. And so that clarifies where the board stood, what exactly happened on that date. So I see it as a clarifying move. I see it as a way for someone who looks at the minutes to find out what happened, rather than trying to come to today and sort through all this. But also,
Where's
it's
the
just
footnote at, though? I guess maybe that's where I'm getting confused. Is it on the form or is it in the minutes?
no, it would be either below the discussion in on the minutes. It would either be below the motion itself, below the discussion, or below the entire minutes.
Got it. My misunderstanding. Thank you, Helen. I thought it was going to be on the form. I'm on your page now.
Oh yeah, no, on the minutes themselves.
I
Thank
would
you.
prefer that they be under the discussion rather than the motion itself, because the motion itself is correct, and it's really the discussion later that showed it to be incorrect. You know, that it was not correct. So that's just a thought.
I like the idea of connecting the dots for someone who doesn't know to look at all the minutes. I think it's important. Richard, I'm sorry, Richard, was there a motion? Did you put a motion? You were just thinking about it.
I just made a general motion to add a footnote to the
Okay.
minutes. And then there was more discussion about what that would look like.
Okay, there was a motion. We had some discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Biana will second it. Any board discussion? Okay.
I just want to make sure it goes below the motion because that's what Helen was saying, that it's not clear. It seems like we were talking afterwards that the motion didn't pass, but it actually did pass. So it kind of clarifies that.
Okay. We have that. And then thank you, Beata. Can we, moderator, can we open it up for any public comment?
This is a moderator. If any members of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please moderate. Thank you. Secretary Marcos, we have a motion. Do you mind calling the vote?
Oh, Richard Bookwalter,
Aye.
Lena Doe, absent. Denise Miller,
Yes.
Jeff Farrell,
Aye.
Sharon Pavlovich,
Yes.
Beata Marcos, aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Is that, Heather, is that all inclusive of agenda item number 18? Are we missing anything that we needed to address?
I think that sounds good. Thank you very much to everyone.
Okay. So board, these are my thoughts. We still have 19, 20, and 21. We have people that need to leave by 4:40, which gives it 4:45, 25 minutes. I'm not 100% confident without rushing, which I don't want to do, is that we can get through 19, 20, and 21. I want to know what your thoughts are and carrying it over to the first thing tomorrow.
I totally am cool with that. I just have one request. If we do carry over tomorrow, could we, because we probably won't go longer than noon, could we start at 10? That would afford me the ability to go to a class that I normally attend on Fridays at 9.
I'll defer to legal. Like if we have a quorum and it's noted at 9, what can we change the time? How's that work?
That is a good question. Let me find the agenda. It does say 9 a.m. I will defer to Heather. It's not as if we're starting earlier than 9. Because at that point the public could be noticed by a note in the meeting. The meeting has been delayed until 10 a.m.
Yes, I agree. I mean, the starting earlier is the only thing that's prohibited.
Okay, so is everybody okay with that request? If so, then we can adjourn today and then start at 10 a.m.
Yes.
tomorrow. Everyone's okay with that?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, that works.
We don't have any discipline then, right? There's no closed session?
That is correct. There is no discipline. I mean, my report is not going to be that long. If you all want to wrap it up today, I don't, again, out of regards to Beata's time, or, just come back tomorrow.
I agree with Sharon. I don't think we'll get done by 4:45. I think we have to come back tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, everybody.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you. That adjourns our CBOT board meeting for Thursday, November 4th, 2021 at 4:21 p.m. We'll see everybody. Thank you for everyone's contribution, board staff, legal. We'll see you everybody at 10 o'clock a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Sarah.